All right. So this last week we lost a little bit of time going back and forth to full screen, and so for some reason WebEx seems to lock up sometimes when I'm doing this. So I'm going to leave it on. I got somebody in the background. So if you could record, if you could mute your mic, that'd be awesome. But I'll use this view. But at any time, if anyone is having a difficult time seeing the screen or seeing what's on the screen, just throw it into chat or raise your hand or just talk and tell me, hey, I can't see that or whatever, right? Because it doesn't do any good for me to put stuff up here that y'all can't see. So we do have a number of new folks on here tonight. Well, they're new to this, so I do want to give a shout out to them and also to give some instructions on that. So my friend Joe's on here from New England. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, Kurt, how are you?
I'm good, man. So I wanted to welcome you to this, and so we've got a bunch of new people on, and so for anybody who has either missed any of the sessions or has come in late, um, you have been or you will be invited to Dropbox, and on Dropbox, there's a number of folders there, and so each week there will be a copy of the recording or a copy of a link to the recording, and also a PowerPoint deck that has all the links and those kinds of things. And so if you want to get caught up, you're not too far behind right now. So there was an introductory session 2 Thursdays ago, and all that material is up. There was a session number 1 was last week, and all that information is up. And that will continue throughout this series. To anybody that's new, this is intended to be a discussion, and so not a lecture. And so it's not my intent to talk for 3 hours. It's my intent to talk a little bit, to certainly bring things to bear, to certainly bring tools into the discussion. But then it's also it's for all of us to have this conversation so that we can share what all of us are experiencing and how we're going about the process of surviving and thriving during these times. And so that's just catching everybody up. In all of the slide decks, including tonight's, is you can see there's an email there that I'm using specifically for this class. And so please feel free to add, to send me things, send me whatever you want to send me. I have many conversations all week long with contractors from around the world. And so I will share things with you that they're sharing with me, and conversations that I have, because that's the whole idea, is what's everybody doing so that we can survive and thrive. And so you'll see some really good examples of that tonight. So I'm starting to get a really good critical mass of information from people from other places. And so what I'd like to start seeing is some critical mass from this group. And I guess that's kind of the cost of admission is playing along and participating. And so if you have documents, forms, videos, spreadsheets, whatever, please just send them to me at Survive Thrive. And then also, if you want to talk or text me, you've got my number down there as well. So, all right, so we're going to get right at it. And so, as with everything, every class that I ever teach, my recommendation to you that you start some sort of numbered action item list, and then periodically through the night and also during the night, I ask you what action items you have that you're going to go and do something with as a result of our conversation, tonight. And so again, I'll also encourage everybody to come to each class with questions, problems, issues that you're dealing with, and also asking that no one be a floater or a free rider. We're here to help each other. So I did get one piece of input from my wife last night, who's also a professional educator, and she reminded me of something that would be good to do that I usually do when I'm doing classes. But I was looking at this more of a conversation, and so I will do it. I'll take her advice and do this both at the top of the evening and at the end of the evening. So what I'm going to show you next is an outline of the things that I have prepared for us to talk about tonight. And And then at the end, we'll talk about what we actually covered and anything that we didn't get to tonight, because it's always my method to over prepare and have more materials than we typically can cover in the duration of the class, no matter what kind of class it is. Anything that we don't cover tonight, we will roll over into the next session. The last comment of this sort that I make is this is a moving landscape, and everybody knows this is a moving landscape. So everyone is every day coming up with new things that are happening that they're having to adjust to and what have you, and as am I. And so I won't repeat information we've covered in the past, but we may come back and circle back to various themes for new things that have happened since I've talked to you last about this. And so that's where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead and put the outline up now, and I won't talk about in these detail, but this is the list of things we'll cover tonight in our 8-hour session. No, not really 8 hours, but it's unlikely we'll get through all of these. So in a few minutes, I'm going to go around the virtual room and ask everybody how you're doing and what's new. And so at that, and I'd like to start every class like that, where you tell me what things that you're running into and what you're doing about it. And I think that's useful for all of us to share those. And then that also gives me fodder for things to do research and come back next week with either answers to your questions or input to each of you about what other companies are doing on those topics. And so we'll do that in a few minutes. Then I am going to spend some time, now that we're starting to get that critical mass. Someone needs to mute, please. So we're starting to get that critical mass of information, and so I'm going to share some of that critical mass with you. And I just saw a couple of seconds ago, Philip came in. Philip, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Hey, so I've got you on here, and would you mind, not now, but would you mind shortly going through a few of the key issues on that one PowerPoint that you sent to me?
Sure, no problem at all. I'll get it all set up.
Yeah, and I've got it on my my computer, and I've got the pages I'm going to talk about too. So
okay.
And so this will be a good example to the whole group of the kind of things that really is going to work well in this class. As Philip went off and did some great stuff for his company, and he sent me his information, and so he's going to talk about it as well. So, Chris Potter, are you out there? All right. I thought he was out there. I was going to ask Chris to mute.
Yep, I'm out here, Kirk.
Yeah, would you mind muting? For some reason, we're getting some feedback from you. So thanks. I'm certainly happy to have you talk. But all right, so we'll talk about that. Then I want to move into the economy and the markets, and I pay close attention to that, and there's a lot of intersection with that and the weekly calls that I have with various senior leaders in companies, and also then with the boards on which I sit. So there's weekly interaction on that. So I want to give you an update there. I've got some other useful information there. The jobs report came out again today, as it does every Thursday. We'll talk briefly about that. We talked a lot more about that last week. We're not going to talk about a lot tonight. I will give you the data though. I have last week we talked a fair amount about the stimulus package and the banks and the applications and those kinds of things. There's still a ton of misinformation out there on that, and there's still a fair amount of confusion about that. So I want to give you a tool, and so you can see on this spreadsheet that I'm going to be giving you attachments. And the way I'll give you those attachments is by posting them into Dropbox. So what I'll do is I'll give you a spreadsheet for the loan application for the PPP program. And this spreadsheet we put together, and Bank One endorses it and is using it. So that might be of some use to y'all. We will talk about revenue projections tonight, and I've got a spreadsheet with examples and revisions COVID-19 revisions that you may choose to use as a tool in your company. We've talked a little bit about force majeure and contracts risk, and I've got a tool there as well. And then we'll talk about risk management, and I've got a tool there as well. And then we'll end kind of cycling back to all these. And so that's a lot to do in the time that we have it. I'm not in a rush. The important part is the conversation. So with that, let's talk about talk about how everybody's doing and what's new. So I'd rather have volunteers than call outs, but what's going on in your world?
Kirk, this is Philip. What's going on in our world? I'm currently supporting a project, actually a program in South Africa. And first of all, that country's currency is, lack of a better words, it's basically on junk status.
Uh-huh.
And as a result of that, the client
Philip, was it on junk status before this as well?
It was, but this and again, I'm not. I forget the actual rating on it, the letter rating on it, but evidently it's recently been in further junk status. I forget the triple letters or whatever. On that. So as a result of that, we have to become more creative on our cost control. I myself, I'm currently more tactical. Also in the industrial side of the EPC industry, our company is losing work globally. Our competitors are losing work globally, and they're furloughing workers. RCO has come out and said that. Our competitors have it as well. And I think, Kirk, we heard it from a young lady that worked at Bechtel as well.
Yeah.
And the other fear is, especially with the North American EPCs, is now that some of their share prices are so low after this, there could be ripe for takeovers for foreign entities, which poses another dilemma as well.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's going to be interesting across the board to watch that, because the valuation of most people's companies is dropping dramatically, and we expect to see a lot of mergers and acquisitions and takeovers, and that will definitely change the landscape. In fact, there's a fairly strong feeling at the federal level. By federal, I'm talking about the Fed, not the federal government, but the federal bank. That we yet again are going to see aggregation and larger companies swooping in and buying up the mid-sized and smaller companies that are either going out of business or are seriously damaged. So
one thing, Kirk, if I can just also mention another thing that's happened, and this has happened before the industry, but it's more accelerating in our industry.
Yeah,
is gone are what we call the mega projects.
Yeah.
So the competitors and also the folks that have worked on these, and what we classify anything over $500 million US total install cost in an industrial plant and above, those projects are few and far between, and it's mainly maintenance and turnaround. So the level of, and I don't mean this as anything derogatory, but the level of, let's say, oversight or the skills are not as much required. And so that also affects many of us as well too.
Yeah, and that's a good comment, Phil, because that happens in any kind of economic downturn. What we see is now, for those of you on the call, Philip does mega projects, and so in the not mega, more traditional projects that most of the people on this call do. What we've always seen, anytime in your career there's been a recession, what we see is the first thing that happens is how we lose housing, and then housing starts to go down, whether it's single family or multi, and then those housing contractors migrate up to light commercial work, and then the light commercial guys move up to more traditional commercial work, and commercial guys who haven't done a lot of healthcare get into healthcare and so forth. And everybody understands this. And of course, that has implications for your competition, right? And so whatever niche you're in, it's going to be affected by this. Maybe not just at this second, and this is going to be one of the themes for tonight. Maybe not just at this second, but certainly we will see the impacts as the year goes on. And that's one of the things we're going to either get to tomorrow, next time. Is there's still a really strong feeling amongst a lot of contractors that I'm talking to that, hey, we're all good. I mean, we're busier than shit. Well, we're going to see how that evolves over time, and I'm telling you, it's not going to it's not going to stay like it is right now. So, all right, so Philip, thank you. Other folks, how are you doing, and what's new? All right, Schaefer, it's your first night on, so you got to talk, man. So how you doing, and what's new? I see your lips moving. Are you just messing with me? Can't hear you, Steve. All right, all right, now I hear somebody coming in. Is that you, Steve?
This is Steve Bartram. I don't know if that's who you meant.
Yeah, go ahead.
But update from last week. I had my first contractor, and to give everybody some perspective, I managed 30 plus projects, $200 million portfolio, so it's pretty large. So and 20 plus contractors. So we had our first contractor decide to take a 3-week. We're not going to work due to COVID-19 in the utility space. So the utility space, they like to deem themselves as essential, and people don't argue with them on pretty much anything unless with the utility you're a part of, unless there's something else that's happened. But they kind of get a blanket. Everything you do is essential. We don't really know what you do. Yeah, sure. If you guys say it's important, we don't want to lose our electricity. So that was interesting. My client took it fairly well. My client is the utility. They took it fairly well. There's also very minimal impact in them shutting down for 3 weeks with this specific contractor. So that's kind of the update. We're curious to see if it's going to ripple into other contractors. Contractors like to talk. They're all very close. And contractors with utilities, typically utility has a list of people they work with, and that's about it. And so we're curious to see if other utilities are going to follow suit or not. So that happened on Sunday. I got a phone call from the owner asking what my opinion was, and my opinion was basically, you need to do whatever you think is right. And so he shut down for till May 4th, because in Maryland, where I'm located, our peak is supposed to be hitting in the next 2 weeks, apparently. So that's kind of the update.
So the customer shut down, the utility?
No. I'm sorry, no. Only the one contractor shut down.
Okay.
Everyone else is still 100% moving forward. They're having issues with their people requesting hazard pay. People aren't attending lockdowns for engineering and other things. So it's becoming a problem where a week ago it wasn't. Now all these things are starting to happen, and it's becoming an issue.
Yeah, there's lots more movement across the industry with relative to hazard pay. And where that's coming from is, well, I don't know if it's push-pull. It's probably both push and pull. Is that on one side is, as companies are choosing to do this and choosing to pay hazard pay, of course, that word is getting out, and other companies are following suit. But also the workers are starting to feel as if maybe they're carrying an undue burden in being out there working on this. And so we are starting to see a fair amount of movement there. How is that contractor who chose not to work, how is he being viewed by you and through you to the end user client?
So I have a very good relationship. So I am a program manager for the utility. I don't work directly for the utility. They hire our services.
Okay.
So my response was, you need to do what you think is right. and I'm not going to hold it against you for future work.
Okay.
And I pointed out the fact that if you end up with a bunch of recordables potentially, because we're still not really sure. I mean, maybe you might know from what I've read, we're not sure if you get COVID-19 on the job site, if it's going to be deemed a recordable or not. I know the potential is there, but I haven't seen anything where that's happened yet.
Yeah, OSHA is still deciding that, so they haven't decided yet on that.
And he's a small, local, family-owned company. I said, if it rules that way, you get 10 guys out of your 38 crew, you'll never recover.
Well, you'll be out of business.
He's like, I didn't even think of that. I said, you'll be opening up another company because you'll have to go out of business and start over. And he says, I didn't even think about that. And he basically said, I can't sit at home working from home with my guys in the field.
Yeah.
And I explained that to my client, and they said, we don't want anyone to do anything that they feel is unsafe or not right. And so they were on board, which was good.
Yeah. It's good. It's of course now it's fortunate because that's only one subcontractor of 20 or 20 plus. And so, of course, it may be a different answer from the client if 10 or 15 contractors weren't there, and now you started to really affect schedule and even just operation, right?
Yeah, and they were smart. They asked me what their impacts were before they made a decision. I'm like wondering why they were asking me if they delayed everything a little while. I had suspicions, so they knew that they didn't have to actually be working, and they're not critical path. So. But I'm, curious to see what other contractors do in the meantime.
Yeah, so this is all. I appreciate the conversation and the comments too, Steve, because I think it's good input. And again, to everyone on this call, I think one of the benefits to all of us in this program is we've got all kinds of different contractors on this call. So we've got certainly a heavy dosing of electrical and mechanical subcontractors. We also have general contractors on here. We have large contractors, we've got small contractors, and so we really do want to hear everyone's comments, and so I think that's a benefit to all of us. Steve Schaefer, did you figure out your microphone yet? No, your lips are still moving, buddy. John, you had some problems earlier. Do you want to chat with maybe with Steve and see if you can get him up? Because I'd love to hear what he has to say. So what about you, Marty? How things in Arizona?
Pretty good. We've got one project that was coming up in August. It was a HUD project, so one that you would think would be considered more essential that the finance got pulled from. Otherwise, we haven't heard any rumblings at all about stuff shutting down, though everybody out here is taking things more seriously as far as increasing PPE use. It hasn't happened yet, but one of our biggest generals is talking about having masks be next to mandatory on all their projects, and we're ordering that additional supplies for things. You can't get the N95 right now, but the next best thing that we can get a hold of so that our guys can all wear that out there, protect themselves, distributed hand sanitizer and disinfectant to all the jobs. And it's you're doing everything that you can to keep things going and keep guys with the ability to get food on their table without endangering anybody, at least to the extent that you can.
Well, I'm glad to hear that as a contracting community, they're taking it seriously. And I'm glad to hear what you just said, Marty, because this is one of the conversations I've been having. And without question, the majority of contractors are still not having their guys wear masks. And so if y'all have, this will be the first, I'd like everybody put this on your action item because I'm not going to poll the audience. I know the answer. We got 50 some plus people on the call right now. And I am 100% sure that the majority of you are not having your guys wear masks right now. But anybody acknowledge that you're not doing that right now? One of the 50, I see some heads shaking. So
we're not. My company is, my client is not.
Okay.
So we're in a unique spot, but so that's neither here nor there.
So here's your action item. What you've heard, I'm not going to go back in time. I promise you I won't do that, so I won't. If you are new to the call tonight, go back to the other two lectures. I'm not going to spend much time at all tonight on the safety aspect, but the mask aspect is important and the gloves aspect is important. And so one of the basic things that most contractors have in fact done is they've in their policies they put out with their SOPs and their instructions to their employees is we're following CDC guidelines. Well, the CDC guideline as of last week is masks are recommended. And so if masks are recommended, then you should have your people wearing masks. We have our people wearing masks. And so, like Marty says, you can't get the N95, but you can get the other mask. And the CDC is even is recommending cloth masks for everyone. And so, this is a real challenge in that people don't want to wear them. We just got to get over that. And so, from a safety standpoint tonight, you need to be wearing masks, and you need to set the example with your people. So. All right, Marty, I appreciate that. I want to just take two more, hear from two more people just randomly. So, but let's make it random. So what else is, I need two more of you to tell me what's going on in your world.
Hey, Kirk.
Hey.
Nick in Wisconsin here. So from last week, not a lot has changed. Current project, though, that I am working on, the owner rep has come out and told me that their company is now enforcing the face mask.
They are. Okay.
So we're building on in addition to their existing general office. So right now, the game plan is to start implementing in the trailer. Just because we're out doing some earthwork and some masonry foundations right now. So whenever anybody from the company comes into our office trailer, that we are wearing the mask and trying to help prevent that spread that way.
Good. Okay, so that's a start. And the reason you're not doing it out on the site is because of the type of work that you're doing right now.
Right. Yep.
All right. And then, so I think that's a good first step. I think we all know from a safety standpoint, culture is everything, right? And so one of the problems that you end up having is situational safety. And for my money, situational safety doesn't work. And so it just makes it easy for us we just got a blanket policy. Everybody will have masks on 100% of the time. And so I think you've made a great first step. And then for me, as a manager, I just push it on out to the next step. All right, good. Thanks, Nick. All right, I'm going to call somebody else. Justin, man, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? Mr. Dorsey. Can you hear me? I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. Go ahead.
You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead. What's new with you, Justin?
Just a few developments this week. Just, getting random email from Texas general contractor making a mandatory policy for their entire company that they're going to start issuing joint checks to all subs.
Wow.
Parkway Construction out of Texas, which we've worked with them in the past, and but it's never been I just thought it was interesting that they just made this company edict that they're going to issue joint checks. Spoke with one of our suppliers who had some of their contractors who were calling and say, I'm going to pay half my bill this month. And the president of the company said, that's fine, but we'll just going to have to put your account on hold.
Yeah.
So that I found that kind of they were taking a real hard line on it.
Yeah.
And not taking a case by case, but so that's some of what's going on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Justin, and that's to everybody on the call here. Is everybody knows what a canary in the coal mine is, right? What's a canary in the coal mine? What's that mean?
Yeah, it's indicating the survivability.
Yeah, it's the coal miners just take the canaries down there, right? Because the canaries would die first, and when we had bad air, and so that was the first indicator. Already, only 3 weeks in or whatever to this the situation, when you hear about joint checks and about subs slowing down their pay to suppliers, that's an indication of either people already experience cash flow issues or anticipating experiencing cash flow issues and starting to do things about it. So starting to take measures about it. Now, how do y'all feel as a group out here about joint checks? And you have to unmute to talk.
Kurt, this is Dan. Can you explain what a joint check is? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll let Justin go ahead and explain it since he brought it up. So, Justin, tell everybody about joint checks.
Well, you got to list all your suppliers on every pay app on your AIA billings, and it's a pain in the ass. It's a big deal especially if you got vendors you don't have long-term relationships. If you got good long-term relationships, it flows pretty fluidly, but it can basically, it puts the supplier in line ahead of your payroll on Friday, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. What it does is it puts manage your own cash flow. Okay? So yeah, there's lots of problems with joint checks, and so there's administrative problems, there's relationship problems, there's cash flow problems, there's trust problems. It's almost always not always. It is always an indication that someone has either a lack of trust about payment. Because for example, the owner or depending on where you are in the chain, right? So if I'm a subcontractor, I've got suppliers for me, and my customers doesn't have any right to touch my suppliers or have communication with them. When I give my partial lien release each month in exchange for my payment, then that payment is mine to do with it what I will. When a general contractor goes to joint checks, what they're saying is, okay, so they're going to issue a check to Southland and to Ferguson. And so now I have to get Ferguson to sign off. And so this is, so it's an administrative problem. It's a very bad canary in the coal mine. So, all right. So lots of things happening in real time, and as we know that they are. So, all right. Before I move on, anybody have anything else that has come up that they think is unusual that other people aren't experiencing? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you now. Who's talking?
It's Steve Schaefer.
Hi, Steve. How are you, man?
Good.
Good.
Backing up for you a little bit. We're busy.
Yeah.
We purchased some infrared digital thermometers. So we've instituted taking everybody's temperature every morning.
Okay.
And logging that. We've gotten cloth masks. Everybody has a couple of them so they can wear one, have another one for the next day. Kind of go home and wash them. You can't find anything anywhere else. So improvise. We send wipes to the job and gloves, and we don't need booties because we're out, in construction.
Yeah.
So
have you given your employees any instructions as far as when they get home, what to do? So, I mean, for example, we all know what the nurses and doctors are doing, right? The nurses and doctors are taking their clothes off in the garage or somewhere outside of the family space and leaving them in the family space. Is anybody giving instructions and encouraging their employees about that?
We have not done that.
What do you think about that, Steve?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, look, we have had, out of the 5 active projects that we have going right now, one was a senior living building. They closed that down middle of March. Yeah. Another one had a laborer test positive for COVID-19. So that put terror in everybody that was on the project. Yeah. So the GC shut that job down and sanitized the building. Luckily, there weren't any windows and doors in, so it was in the process of getting out. So it was a little easier. but it's been difficult. But that's a great idea to have them take them off. I might even try to get them overalls so that if they want to work in those.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I don't know if I haven't talked to anybody who's doing the overalls. I hadn't really even thought about it, but it makes all the sense in the world. I taught in Europe for a year, about 10 years ago, and I was in 20 some countries in Europe, working with contractors all over Europe, and most European craft workers work in coveralls.
Right.
And even before they get in their car, they're taking the coveralls off, of course, and going home. So, all right. Well, I appreciate the update from people. I'll ask everyone when you come in each week, if you can share things that are new, because I've already got. This is why I'm looking away from the camera. A fair amount is when you're saying things that I'm not doing, or things that are or that you are doing. I'm writing those things down and add them to the list to let everybody else know as well. So I think that's exactly what we want to accomplish here. So, all right, so let me go back to.
Hey, Kirk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nick at Wisconsin here. I guess one other thing that are really just this week that kind of kicked in was with our safety director, if any of our employees, carpenter wise or subcontractors, are reporting in sick.
Yeah.
Doing almost a OSHA inspection of them to just verify, do they have the symptoms of COVID? Are you running a temperature? When did the symptoms come in? So that was just implemented this week. We've had a few people that kind of came up with the flu symptoms that missed work, but we kind of really started digging into that just to make sure that it isn't a COVID related case.
So tell me more about how that works. So somebody calls in sick or is calling in sick, then
Yep.
what? What are you doing specifically?
So our safety director and our field operations and vice president of operations, they kind of got together and created a list of questions to ask. So obviously it's easier with our employees because we know that they're out sick. But our safety director is to call them and then ask them the 10, 15 questions that they came up with. Obviously, what are your symptoms? Do you have a fever? When did your first symptom come into place? And kind of go from there. And it's more getting pushed onto our superintendents to take note if a guy is not at work of a subcontractor for our safety guy to follow up with them exact same questions.
Okay. And I don't remember, have you shared that list with me yet, Nick?
No. Like I said, this just came up within the last couple days here. So if I'll get a hold of the questions here and I can send it off to you.
Great. If you would email it to me, the rest of y'all like to have a copy of that? Yes?
Sure.
No. Okay, good. All right. So Nick, send that to me and I'll make sure everybody gets out to everybody. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So Kirk, before you move on,
Sure.
I wanted to just share what my biggest problem is.
Okay, good.
With my client is they're telling people that it's against HIPAA to check your employee's temperature before showing up to work.
Yeah.
And from things I know and whatnot, it's not even a HIPAA violation. It's ADA. So and that was from the CEO of the company. So they're all like, nope, that's terrible. We can't be doing that. It's against rules. So I think awareness is the biggest problem we're currently having, just in general, of things and information and awareness.
Yeah, that's a really good comment, Steve. Is that I had the same kind of pushback when I did my SOP for I talked about it last week. So somebody needs to mute, please. So I talked about last week is we have a policy of that starts with, is this job essential? Sorry about that. Phone's ringing in the background. Is this job essential? If it is, then we're looking for volunteers at the craft level. In order to be a volunteer, we have a checklist that asks a series of questions about them relative to this, exactly what Steve was talking about. But one column is for them, the employee. One is for anybody in their home. And the third column is for anybody in their circle that they're touching, like a relative that's nearby or whatever. And we ask them to voluntarily do that checklist. And then if they've checked any of the boxes off, then they may not work in our company. And then if they didn't check any of the boxes off, then we're asking for volunteers, and then we're offering hazard pay. So this is an SOP I talked about last week, and we have that SOP in place. And I've had pushback, not from employees, but for people say, oh, you can't do that because of HIPAA. My approach, our approach is, I am erring on the side of doing the right thing, what I believe do the right thing, and also better be safe than sorry. I don't think it's a violation of HIPAA. If I was asking them to take their temperature and then send me that number, then perhaps we could start to have issue. I'm not asking that question. The phrase I used last week with all of this is that we've designed our form so that they make a positive assertion, and that's a legal term, right? A positive assertion. And in doing that, we don't think we have any problem with HIPAA or ADA. So, but Steve's right is that this is not a moving target. I hate that phrase. This is lots of people being, what's the word I'm thinking about? Like when somebody's acting as if they're an attorney, but they're not. But yeah, so for my money, Aaron, don't ask for specific information. Certainly, date of birth and what their actual temperature is. Give them guidelines and have them make positive assertions. I have not posted that procedure in Dropbox yet, and I just made a note to myself to do that. The SOP on the positive assertion checklist. Okay.
Hey, Kirk. Kirk, can you hear me?
Yes.
Jim Nair in Cincinnati. So we have been asking our guys to report what their temperature is this past week. Are you advising against that?
Yeah, I am. I think I am. And so what we tell them is that if the procedure is to take their temperature, and we've provided them with the devices to do that. But then we just tell them if your temperature is here or above, do not report to work. And that way we're not getting a number from them that we could have some risk with him. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense. I got some changes to do tomorrow then. Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, good. So now I want to, the program is Survive and Thrive. And so we'll have an intersection of those things. And so now I'm starting to get some really good things from people. And so I want to go now to a presentation that someone sent me that they had done for their company as a result, just as a result of what they do they do on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm going to pull that up now. So this is what other people are doing and we haven't talked about yet tonight. So let me move to the first one of those. All right, those of you who know me know that I'm always about marketing and selling, and that's a big part of my life. We're big design build contractors, and so we're always thinking that way. And so what I just shared with you is a report that someone put out last week. A fellow named Andrew Stetler. I don't think Andrew's on this call tonight. If you are, Andrew, speak up. But so Andrew works for a company called Ton and Blank. And they are a general contractor, but they're owned by the sisters of, I forget which group of sisters, but anyway, they do hospital construction. And so this is a general contractor. And so this is what they've put out, and this is how they have responded, both for two reasons. One, to respond to the health crisis and the capacity crisis at hospitals, and then two, to market and sell. And so I want to walk you through that. So I'm assuming you can, I got Bluebeam up right now. I'm assuming you can see on my screen, excuse me, a title that says COVID-19 from preparation to action. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to scroll through it pretty quickly, but please ask me whatever questions you want as I go through. And so this is an example of a company who's is showing what they're doing. And so you can look at it at your leisure, so I'll scan through it pretty quickly. But so they have been providing temporary triage facilities. They work at 11 hospitals. Temporary triage facilities converting space in the existing hospitals to isolation rooms. Because of the shortage of PPE, they're actually producing their own face shields and their own safety glasses. And then they have a sterilization robot that they're trying to bring online. They haven't brought it online yet, but trying to bring it online and also patent it. Hand sanitizer and masks we've already talked about, and about being part of the solution. And so again, I'm just going to fly through this if you have questions as we go. So you can see right there in that picture, you can see a picture of a temporary triage, temporary structure. And so you can see on the right of that picture, the entryway, and you can see some other things as we go through. They built it, they now can produce these in 7 days. They actually build it in 5 days or less. One they built in 3 days. And so that's pretty quick. We're still going to have the need for temporary triage facilities. Let me pause for a second to make sure we're clear on this. All right, so I know almost everybody on the call, if not everybody, and everybody on the call is smart. Everybody on the call are good business people, but we all get news from different sources. And so one of the things that troubles me right now about the news, again, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. One of the things that troubles me about the news across the spectrum is, what is the news now talking about? What's the buzz about the quote pandemic non-experts? What are they all talking about? What's everybody reporting on?
The deaths.
I think they're moving beyond that. I think they're moving away from talking about the deaths.
They're leveling off. We're back to work.
Yes. So it's terrifying to me, and I think it's also terrifying to the epidemiologists that we're talking now about we're hitting the peak, it's leveling off, everything's going to be good. It's terrifying me because we've seen this before in other pandemics and other epidemics. This was a huge cause of the tragedies in 1918 with the influenza. We're not approaching the peak. We're approaching the peak in New York City. We're approaching the peak in New Jersey. We're approaching the peak where it started the earliest. That does not mean we're approaching the peak in the rest of the country. And so it's very worrisome to me. I was the other morning, I was talking to my wife, and I said, yeah, we're all getting tired of this. And the problem is as we're getting tired of it, and as spring is coming, people are starting to emerge again. And we know this is true. You probably know this is true from your own communities, and that's very dangerous. And so the reason that I bring that up is that if you're not in an area that has already peaking, like New York or New Jersey, then you're probably not near your peak yet, which means probably your hospitals, your local hospitals, are in the need of temporary triage facilities. And so that's another way to help your local hospitals, but also then to create both do good and do right, and perhaps create markets. But more importantly than markets right now is solving people's problems. So in this Blue Beam report, you can see information there, which I won't go over, about the size and the scale of this temporary triage facility. And so I think there's some photographs in here as well. There's photographs, and you can see in the bottom left now, in the middle left now, you can see it starting to go up. So the first thing that this company did, Sun and Blank did, was they reached out to providers to provide temporary triage facilities. And they were getting quotes back from the temporary triage facilities of between $12,000 and $15,000 a month to rent temporary triage these temporary triage facilities, and very, very quick, and then a lead time issue. And so instead, what this company did was this company went to Menards, who most of you, if you're in the Midwest, you know Menards, went to Menards and told them what they're trying to accomplish. Anyway, make a long story short, they sourced these wooden pole barn buildings from Menards, and so the entire temporary triage facility that you see in this report, the entire cost was $12,000. And so they were able to get this up and going for $12,000 in between 3 to 7 days. And so that's the kinds of things that people, of course, are doing in the industry. And I'm sure you're doing some of those things as well. But I'm also equally sure that there's probably some of you who are not doing that kind of thing. And so that's just an example of what some companies are doing. The next piece on here is converting space to isolation rooms, and I won't do that. There you can see they're making their own. They're producing their own face shields, producing their own safety glasses, and then this is a sterilization robot that can sterilize rooms using UV light. And so this is them as the general contractor trying to bring to the fore, especially in the wake of PPE shortage and things like that, where this UV sterilization robot will be utilized to sterilize N95 masks so they can be reused safely. So we know that this kind of thing is happening all over the country. I just don't know what you're doing. And so these are just some ideas. And the same thing is, even if they're not talking about in the hospital, if you have a shortage of N95 masks, then you might consider doing something like this in your space. All right, I won't go on. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that down now. The day after he shared this presentation with me, he shared something else with me, in that they actually now, just the next day, created a are manufacturing a device for intubation, for removal of intubation, to keep the fluids from going all over the place. And so this is the kind of creativity that I think makes you proud to be an American, but also these are contractors who are doing this. And so I'll share that with you. And if you find it useful, that's great. If you don't find it useful, well, then I'm okay with that as well. So that's the kind of things that I want to share. All right, so that's what some other folks are doing. Another one that is a customer of mine is Dubach Electric. Dubach Electric is out of Chicago, and so let me pull that up now. So give me a second, sorry. Okay, so now I'll share that. And they're just an electrical contractor, but they are progressive in both protecting their people, but also thinking about protecting the client. And so what I have up here and now on the screen is just a link from their LinkedIn page. And so I'm going to try to show this video. And so the video is playing. I intentionally don't have the sound playing. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna pause it. Let me go back right here and pause it. I didn't do it justice by saying. So what Steve Schaefer said is what a lot of you are doing is you've given or providing for your folks digital thermometers, and that's good. And many people are doing that, and that's good. And there's a shortage of them, and that's good. But now this electrical contractor has now gone to the next step, and they're saying, okay, well, everybody's doing that, but you still might not be as secure as you could be. And so what they're providing for their customers, and frankly, what they're selling is using point of entrance scanning for everyone coming into the space. And so they're calling it their DoThermX technology. And so you can see on the screen there, the photograph on the left is, showing two different individuals coming in, and one is screening green because his temperature is in the right zone, and then the other worker's coming in and he's outside of the zone, and so that's in real time scanning those people. And so on the last slide, the last picture on that slide on the right, you can see the infrared device. So now that you can watch their pitch, and so safeguarding your facility at the various points of entrance, facial temperature. And I'll let it roll here. Data analysis, you can capture data in real time. And so this is better than the manual temperature gun and so forth, and you saw that. And so contact-free measurement. A lot of companies have gone to, a lot of workplaces have gone to someone there, a third party, actually taking the temperature and recording it. And so you can see their list of industry applications there. I go back just a little bit on that slide. And so industry applications, and they show, of course, a broad array of industries. And so the reason I'm showing this tonight is this is a progressive company who's doing good things, who's doing both well and doing good. And so what do y'all think about this? Give me your feedback on what this contractor is doing relative to scanning. Good news is I'm on till 10, and then you all know me well enough. If I ask a question, you don't answer. Get a frog or a turtle or a dog or something.
It's nice marketing, but how accurate is it measuring temperature externally for actually what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, as far as accuracy, it's actually pretty accurate. And so we've had digital scanning of temperatures for a long time, and a lot of contractors on this call use digital scanning for temperatures in their day-to-day mechanical and electrical work, and it's relatively accurate. And so this isn't the good news is this isn't a new technology. I saw Chad in the chat put a question up. It looks good, but how practical it is. Chad, tell me more about what you're thinking there with your question as far as practicality. Were you thinking about the economic and the marketing piece of it? I know you're out there, Chad. Talk to me.
I can verbally talk to, I guess. Yeah, I just don't think that, I think that's great stuff to put out there, and I think it'll help cover things for the intermittent side of it. But in the long run, how long will it go?
All right, I think that's a good question. I'll respond to it, and then I want others to respond to it too, because there's always the possibility that you disagree with me. As long as we're not talking politics, which we're not in this class, then that's good. So I'm thinking about it. I always think about building wealth, creating wealth, and for me, creating wealth is solving other people's problems. Short-term, long-term, right? So survive and thrive. And so I think Chad's question is a really good question relative to the thriving piece. And so is there a long-term play in adding this kind of thing to your quiver of tools or your quiver of solutions that you're selling to industry? My answer is yes. And it especially goes on the low voltage side of the electrical business, right? Is that, a long time ago, it was just telephone, and a long time ago, we went to voice data and things like that. And so what am I selling? I'm selling safety, security, operations, efficiency, all those kinds of things. And I think one of the natural outcomes of the COVID outbreak and crisis will be a heightened couple of things. One will be a heightened awareness of people and manufacturers and producers, et cetera. And in fact, that's why I left it up on the screen here, of people thinking about being more cognizant of illnesses in the workplace. It's kind of like the movie Contagion writ large. So I can't imagine hospitals in the future not doing this. Whether there's an outbreak or not, I think there's going to be a heightened awareness that we want to isolate people more quickly than we've done that in the past. We do a lot of design build on hospitals. And so I certainly can see a change in the intake process, because I trust most of you are as terrified as I am when I go to an urgent care or a hospital. One of the things I've said for years, even though we build hospitals all over the world, is I hate going into hospitals because people get sick and die there. And you say it kind of as a joke, but it's a reality. And I suspect that we may change hospital design to quickly scan for things like temperature and isolate. So I think it may change design there. I certainly believe this is also true in many other manufacturing situations, like food and pharmaceuticals and those kind of things. So in non-clean room settings, or even in the even in the in clean room. So I think it's a long-term play. I think it's a natural add-on to you see on here airports and hospitals and all. I think I haven't gone through each of their icons there, but I certainly can see this being a long-term addition to the value-added services I provide. All right, so that's my piece on that.
Yeah.
What do the rest of y'all think?
Kirk, this is Dave Fedden down in St. Pete, Florida.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. I agree. I think it's self-checkout. It's something they can put in, have one person back there that's handling multiple areas and being able to screen quicker. It's upfront cost that's going to pay for itself quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, good. I always like it when people agree with me. Anybody else agree with me? Because I'd like to have some more affirmation. Anybody else think it could be something you could add to your business?
What invasion of privacy things do you get into with having something like this? Yeah,
Dustin, I think that's a really good question. They're going to have to get in line with Google and Apple and Sprint and all the kind of things. But this is a really good question. In fact, I'm going to make a note right now to add some references on what I call AI, privacy, and invasion, because I've done a lot of reading on AI, and I'm going to see what I can find related to privacy and these kinds of sensors, because my gut reaction is you're probably not at great risk. I think it is a conversation to have with your client in doing it, but I think people will be buying this kind of add-on. So I'm going to make a note, Dustin, to add to this for next week, add some resources for next week. I also had a thought as Dave was talking, is you know what? I'm going to put these in my buildings, my workplaces, because it's about the health of the employees. Do you all think we're going to be having lawsuits? The conversation came up earlier about OSHA, and I think it was Steve Bartram was talking about OSHA and COVID-19 and recordables. And if you have 30 people and you have 10 people, 10 recordables because of COVID-19, you're out of business. I don't think that kind of thing is going to go away. And so as a result of the lawsuits that I think that we're going to see over time, I think we're also going to see those kinds of lawsuits in our own companies about, hey, Bobby was in here and Bobby was infected and you didn't do anything to verify that Bobby was infected. And so now I'm going to sue you. I got sick and took it home, and God forbid my mother-in-law who lives with me died. Do you all think there could be lawsuits like that in any of our?
That's already happening.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Philip.
No, I was saying that's already happening. In fact, I've heard some of the subcontractors start getting lawsuits, and as well as I think today I read it in the retail establishment too. Some workers were filing lawsuits.
Yeah, so I see this I see that's a natural outcome of all of this. It's not going to go away whenever this finally does go away. And so, I hadn't really thought about retail either, but I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And again, I don't want to have a conversation right now about Big Brother, but folks, Big Brother's already here in a big way, much more so than most people in the States are aware. As for example, like in the UK, if you go to the UK, there is nowhere that you will be that there's almost nowhere that there's not a video being taken of you. And so, it's a great question about privacy and all that. So on the civil liberties side of it, that's one conversation, and I think it's worth having. For me as a contractor and as a capitalist, I think what Dubach is doing is just spot on, and I think they're ahead of the curve. Hang on a second. I also think that they are mitigating their own risk better than I'm mitigating in my company, because I'm making big hay about this SOP I have that has positive assertion. Well, if I was doing this, I wouldn't have to worry about positive assertion. Go ahead, Steve.
No, it's just I'm lucky enough I date an attorney, and it's not a matter of will there be lawsuits, but it's the outcome of those lawsuits.
Yes.
So will people actually be found guilty of negligence in how they handled COVID-19. And I don't think any of that's been sorted out yet, but that will be the big tell. Because once you set precedent, it's gonna matter.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. I think that's a great clarification too. It's the outcome of the lawsuits, and of course, what we know happens relative to lawsuits is it takes a while until that precedent is set, and so it actually takes a big batch of cases to come through the system until the appeals courts start to rule on them, because you certainly will get rulings on both ways as this unwinds until it finally becomes what's known as, of course, settled case law. In the meantime, of course, in our own companies, everybody on this call, it's about risk mitigation for your own wealth and for your own company. And so, if you can find an easy solution to that risk mitigation, why wouldn't you, right? So, all right, good. I wanted to show you what some companies are doing. So I showed you what Ton and Blank is doing. I showed you what Dubach is doing. And so now I'm going to move it to, I think the next one I had up was Phillips. And so let me check, and I'm pretty sure it is. So Philip, I can pull it up, or do you want to pull it up? Do you care? Do you have it on your device, Philip? Can you pull it up easily, or do you want me to pull it up? All right, Philip's pull it up. I can't hear you though, Philip. So I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. So
Okay.
Philip, why don't we do this? So this is, why don't you give the intro on what it is that you produce, because it's 25 slides, and then I'll tell you which slides that I'm most interested in hearing about. And so they're all good, but why don't you give us just a 30-second background on what you did here?
Sure. So my position, I'm essentially a project commercial manager, or a business manager, sometimes they call it, or project services manager. And so what that entails is I'm essentially, I manage the financials or the commercial aspect of the project. And so what that entails is many different directions. One is the contractual. So with COVID here, some of the areas that we put as an agenda, and what I did is we presented this actually to our CEO as well as to our line of business on some of the areas to look at in contractual finance, because we all know contractual is really not legal, it's commercial. And so
go to page 2 and just kind of do the buzz through on this, because I like the list. But let's go to the next slide there.
Yeah. So there's things to consider on the contractual side of it is now we call it a prime contract checklist. That's basically your contract between your owner and the general contractor per se, or the EPC contractor. Also looking at alternative contractual remedies for risk mitigation. Looking at your force majeure clauses. In some countries, you have to specify in your force majeure clauses the actual event. Just using act of God is not acceptable based on past precedent. I need to emphasize that, because everything's on past precedent as well. The importance of documentation, especially now as owners cancel projects. And then also looking at your financials. You need to do a revised cash flow. You need to look at your special risks that you've accepted in your contract. You need to look at some of the cost categories and record them for suspension or partial suspension on your sites. You need to also look at payment considerations. That's going to be a key in making sure that you get your payment from your clients. You also need to look at, if there's cancellations or delays on your remobilization considerations.
All right, good. So I want to see the next slide too, but hold for just a second,
okay?
Because I'm a big fan of teaching in the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and jump jump down on my outline for tonight to a tool that I want to give to all of you because because Philip was just talking about finance risk and project controls. And so let me jump down to show you a spreadsheet that I'll put up into Dropbox for y'all that relative to making a revised revenue projections. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this. All right, so all right. So what now is on your on Dropbox, I'm sorry, on the screen is an Excel spreadsheet. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, good, thank you. All right, so this is just in our business, in my businesses, we do 12-month rolling 12-month rolling projections on everything. 12-month rolling revenue projections, 12-month rolling cash flow projections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All companies should do this. Not all companies do this. So, but before I launch into this one, I want to ask everybody a question. Is there a difference between a revenue projection and a cash flow projection?
Yes.
Yes. An unqualified yes. Revenue, the definition of earned revenue is it is your direct cost plus your indirect cost plus your projected profit on that cost. And so that's revenue and has nothing to do with cash flow, nothing at all to do with cash flow. In subsequent weeks, I'm going to give you cash flow projections and also do some things with that. But tonight I want to talk, at least for just this little bit, on revenue projections. So this is a very simple revenue projection, and walk through relatively quickly what all of you should have done if you haven't done yet. And if you haven't done it, then you need to do it immediately. And so what you're looking at here is this spreadsheet. And so this spreadsheet, the example here is for this division or this unit of the company. It's actually a $7 million. You look at over the far right. It's actually a $7 million division, not a $10 million division. So I'm going to go ahead and change that live here. All right. So we have this business unit that you're running, or this company that you're running, and it's supposed to have $7 million of annual gross revenue at 20% margin and 25% markup. So if I'm running this company, I can divide 7 million by 12 and know that I have to be generating $583,000 worth of revenue a month. And now, of course, as that difference from cash flow, that means I have to be doing $583,000 worth of work a month. Now, right away, when we think of the COVID issue, we have potential problems with jobs that are either shut down or being slowed down or whatever. So clearly that's going to change. And so, but I don't want to get to that yet. I just want to really quickly go through how this revenue projection works. And so the first step in any revenue projection is to plot your anticipated revenue over the duration of the job. And so take all of your jobs and plot each of those jobs across the next 12 months. Now, all companies on this call have three different types of revenue. You have your open contracts revenue. So these are jobs you're working on right now. You have booked jobs that haven't started yet, and that's your backlog. And you will start earning revenue on those jobs at some point. And then there are your jobs that you've proposed on that you haven't been awarded yet, but that you believe you have a high probability of getting. So I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. I'm happy to take your questions. Let me buzz through it, and then we can talk about it, and then we talk about your company. And so we're looking at, I do want you to pay attention to the example jobs that I have on here. And so under open contracts, this company this is a hybrid. I've taken jobs from multiple companies, including mine, on here to give this example. And so this is an example of a pre-COVID-19 revenue forecast, 12-month revenue forecast. So you can see here, I've got how many jobs here? I don't know. I've got 2, 4, 6. I've got 7 jobs here that are in process. And they're varying amounts from really small jobs. Center Street Professional is about a $12,000 job. Center Square Retail, about a $10,000 job. You got Hinman Trade Center at $62,000. Then we've got school projects here at about a 1.1. I've got a medical, this is a manufacturer, Stryker at 3.2 million, and all the way down to a Myers store project of 111,000. So those are the booked jobs that are in process. Now, these jobs are at varying states. And so in the next column there, in column D, is the gross revenue earned to date. And you can see those numbers. And then the spreadsheet calculates the gross revenue remaining. So now we know how much revenue we have yet to earn over the next 12-month period. And so looking at the first job, and I'm not going to do all the jobs, but looking at the first job, there's only $2,300 yet to earn. All of that will be burnt off and earned in May of this year. And then we go down to a zero balance. At the far end, at the far right of the spreadsheet, of course, shows the amount of revenue remaining to be earned and the months of revenue remaining. And so all of these jobs that you can see over here, this is all blank. And so all of these jobs will burn off, all of the open jobs, all of the revenue will be burnt off over the next 12-month period. So you can see for the rest of the jobs, you can see how the revenue flows here. And so I think that becomes self-explanatory. Stryker is just getting ready to start, and that's $300,000, and that will burn off, as you can see there. So that's the open projects. Then the book jobs not started yet. There's only 3 projects on here: Family Health, Pool City Cafe, and Papa Murphy's. And so none of those jobs are going to start earning any revenue until August. And then you can see the revenue spread out for them as well. For the last batch of jobs, we have proposed projects that we believe we have a high probability of getting. And so for us, we're only going to include projects that we believe we're 80% certain that we're going to get these jobs. And then we're going to take a hedge on that revenue. And we only project we only use 70% of that revenue. So for example, you can see here, one of these jobs is Richland Bible Church. And that project's a $980,000 job, but we're only going to project $686,000 worth of the revenue as a hedge, of course, in case we don't get that job. And you can see how all that works. And so looking at this, you can see that the church isn't supposed to start until November. And then there will be revenue remaining on that. There will be $161,000 remaining after this 12-month period is elapsed. And then you can see now some numbers for how many months of revenue on that job would be remaining at the end of this 12-month period. And so we've got 3 months, 12 months, and you can see how that works. And so, before I go any further on that, what's the purpose of aggregating? And so I'll go ahead and finish describing the spreadsheet, then I'll ask. And so you can see here that the total revenue picture here, current picture here for this company is the net sum of open jobs, bad jobs in our backlog, and jobs that we have a high probability of getting. And for this division that only needs to do $7 million a year to be viable, we got about $16.7 million in the hopper. And then when we derate that for jobs we don't have yet, it gets just over $12 million. And then we look at our spread. And so when we look at our spread here, we can see for next month, we're projecting we're going to create about $523,000 worth of revenue. The following month, just under $700,000. And then when we get out here, so this is May, June, July, August. When we get out to September, right now, pre-COVID, we're projecting about $392,000 worth of revenue, which means that we're under our monthly requirement. And if you remember, our monthly requirement in order to have a viable business is $583,000. And so then you can see, we've got a red stop light there, we've got a yellow stop light, and so forth. And so what's the purpose? Forget about COVID. What's the purpose of using this spreadsheet in your company? Period. Why have we used one for decades in our company? What's the purpose?
It lets you know where you need to pick up work.
Yeah, so very simply, this tells you what should I be marketing and selling for when? Do you think our industry, I'll ask it a different way. Do you think the majority of contractors in our industry do this?
No.
Yeah, the answer is an unqualified no. Is an unqualified no. For most of our industry, it's we kind of take a what I call a field of dreams approach to estimating and securing work. Bid it and they will come. We just keep cranking out bids, and so we get jobs and we don't get jobs, and we fill them in the pipeline, and then we figure out how we're going to man the jobs. That's never been a good approach to contracting. What I can see on the screen right now is for this company, which is a composite of jobs that I put together. If I had this, and I do, if I had this, and this is now almost mid-April, I would know that I'm going to have certainly a revenue shortfall of about $60,000 in May. And so right now in mid-April, what I need to be hustling and doing and seeing if I can find a quick hitter kind of job, a little TI job or service job or something that I can build the entire job in May to fill that revenue gap. Now I know in June and July, I'm actually over that. So I know I actually may have some manpower issues because I'm going to have to be producing more labor. And I don't know if I have the manpower for that. And so in the next months of May, June, July, August, in August, it looks like I'm right on target. But then in September, I've got about a $400,000 shortfall because of just the timing on when jobs hit. And then it starts to come back up. And so you get the idea. So I know for me, in real time in my companies and my divisions, I know what kind of work I should be marketing for when. All right. So there's nothing. Go ahead.
Our company does something similar to this. We don't use revenue. We use labor hours to project out approximately where our manpower is going to be.
Yeah.
Do you see any downfalls to doing it that way versus this way?
No, Jeremiah, I don't see a big downfall to it. I don't think you're getting all of the picture though, because I like doing revenue, manpower. And so your comment's a good one because all things flow from revenue, right? Revenue is the most accurate numbers you have in your company, period. In all of your financial, it is the most accurate thing you have because it is the actual work you have done and all of the cost on that actual work plus the profit that you're projecting on it. So I think what you're doing is great from a manpower standpoint. It gives you all kinds of tools so that you know how many guys you need to have working, right? So you're not caught flat-footed needing 10 guys, right? Right, Jeremiah?
Right, yes.
So it's good you doing the revenue, doing the manpower, but I don't think it's complete. And I think that gives you a little bit of danger, especially as you start to have supply chain issues and payment issues and those kind of. I don't want to talk about payment too much because that's really a different function here. But I think it'd be more complete if you added the materials and equipment piece to it as well. And it's easy enough to do. If you're already projecting manpower, you can still have separate spreadsheets. One is the manpower, one is the materials and equipment, and then you just collapse those into your revenue. So I would say you're already there. I would just add it to it. Yeah. So I think you're in the right direction. I think revenue gives you the more complete picture, though. So for everybody, remembering this is pre-COVID, right? And so now I put this composite together. Now, all in all, before I show you the next picture, how would you say this company is set for the next 12 months?
Kurt, I would say they have some holes to fill.
I'm sorry, say again, Steve?
I say they probably have some holes to fill, like you alluded to there. But one of my questions would be, what percentages are you putting in these individual cells as you go across this page that you're anticipating that revenue?
Yeah.
So
that's the right question. So
in certain areas of the country, you go through cold weather, wet weather,
sure.
Depending on when you start a job. you could anticipate a certain amount of revenue, but the weather could knock you out of that just because you can't get there.
Right. No, that's the right question, Steve.
In a certain number?
No, so it's not good. That's a really good question. It's not percentage driven at all. What it is driven by, and I'll go back to Jeremiah's comment, it's driven by the schedule of the job and absolutely is influenced by things like weather, right? And so that's what makes it a universal tool, is that what we all should be doing, and in my companies, this is done at the project management level. What project managers are supposed to do is take their schedule and project manpower, right? Because that's the key driver. And then, of course, the materials that will be installed, that we're going to be installed during that schedule period. And that's what gives you your revenue, right? Because earned revenue is direct cost plus indirect plus profit. And so it should, in fact, be weather driven. And so it's not pencil whipping. That's important. Most companies, sadly, when they do projections, it's just pencil whipping. You have to look at the schedule and say, for example, I'm going to have 4 guys out here for the next 2 weeks, and then 6 guys, and the burn rate of materials is X, and you actually have to do the calculations. But you do that anyway, whether you know it or not, right? Every time you order materials, you're expecting those materials to be consumed over some period of time, and so it is more work for the project manager, but you have to do it, in my opinion. So with a 12-month rolling projection, what you get is, let's say, for example, let's pick a job. I'm picking this job right here. Let's do it in real time. So we've got November, December, January, February. So let's pick one of those jobs. So I'm going down to this job. I don't know what cell it is. I haven't frozen my columns and rows so that you can see what job it is. Doesn't matter. But let's say this month I'm projecting to have $119,000 in earned revenue on that job in January of 2021. But it turns out that my actual revenue, because we're tracking actual too, my actual revenue on that job is only $50,000 because we got snowed out. Okay, well, that changes this number over here, right? And now you know right now that probably what's going to happen is you're going to have to your production because of the job in February or March to still hit your end date. And so now in this month's projection, and we're only updating this on a monthly basis, let's say we recover, I forget what that number was. Let me go back. So it was $119,000. Let's say we got to catch all of that up in the next month. So I'll make this $50,000, and you can do this with formulas too. And so that means now this is going to be $319,000 in that month. And so you literally are shifting it based on what's happening. And so for us in our company, we've always had our project managers make this part of their project review package to update it. And so it really is simply the project manager's projecting when he or she believes costs are going to hit. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yes, that does.
Great, thank you. All right, so this is all still pre-COVID, and so this is me looking at my company or a business division in my company, and I'm talking with the division manager saying, okay, you've got a shortfall of $60,000 in May. I expect that you're going to fill that, because if you don't fill it, you're going to eventually lose your job. And so with some sort of quick hitter, TI job, service job, whatever, then you're a little bit over revenue in these months, especially these 2 months. And so you may have some manpower issues you need to be thinking about. From revenue standpoint, you're going to get ahead. Or if you're the manager and you have the luxury in the schedule, maybe you can push some of these tasks down and out if it doesn't negatively impact your schedule. I have some pretty significant revenue shortfalls in these 2 months. But now remember, it's only out here in April. And so now I know, okay, I need to be selling some significant projects, not just dollar value, but jobs that we're going to do the work in these 2 months. And then the next month are okay. A short revenue shortfall there, which I'm not worried about. And then as you would expect, as you get further down into your 12-month revenue projection, you can see you've got a pretty, as you would expect, you've got some significant shortfalls. But then clearly this appears that we're going to have some jobs kicking in here. So now we're back to positive. So I think everybody in general understands the tool now. So now what do you think is going to happen when we shift to the COVID-19 spreadsheet for these same jobs for the same company?
They're going to be canceled or delayed, some of them maybe.
Absolutely, right? And so now I'll just click on that. And so then step 2 in this is that our need as a company to still produce $7 million worth of revenue at the appropriate gross profit does not change. Your obligation to me as a division manager or a project manager is I'm still expecting you to bring in that same $7 million. And so now the next thing you need to do, and what I was doing 3.5 weeks ago in my companies and with the companies that I sit on their boards, is we were doing what you're seeing on the screen now 3 weeks ago. And so going and looking at every single job on the list and saying, okay, how is COVID-19 going to affect each and every job? And so in this example, and I am going to talk about each of these quickly, Center Street Professional, we know that in the areas where we work, so for example, in California was the first state to do a shelter at home. And so we knew that revenue was going to get pushed. This job right here, the job's almost done. We knew it was not going to happen. And so we pushed that revenue projection out to August. And so the yellow highlighting is the extension of the job we're projecting out into August. Center Square Retail, we did the same thing. We pushed that 2 months. Hinman Trade Center, we pushed 2 months. Now we have a different example in South Haven, a public school, because as soon as they shut the schools down, what are the school districts saying?
They're allowing people to come in and do work.
Yeah, they're saying this is essential work, let's go. And so now instead of these jobs that weren't going to hit until the summer, now we actually accelerated the revenue. So in the first 3 examples, we pushed the revenue to the right. In this example, we pulled revenue back to the left because because of the way my brain works, and most of you know me, my head instantly went into time warp, right? And so doing the dance, right? And so we're going to the left, and we're going to the right. And so we pulled this revenue back to the left. And with Stryker as a medical manufacturer, in spite of the fact that I know that Stryker would love to increase and accelerate their schedule, I also know because of job conditions and special materials and equipment that they're not going to be able to do that. So we didn't move Stryker at all. And then with M43 Retail and the Meyer store, both of those are retail projects, we pushed them out to the right. That absolutely changed our revenue projection for existing jobs, open contracts. On the book jobs, it was even less a pretty picture. Family health, nothing's going to change there. That's a relatively small job, and so we made no changes to that projection. Full City Cafe, we're fully expected. This is in our backlog. We fully expect that they're going to go out of business, and so while we have a contract, we wrote them off. That doesn't mean if they don't go out of business, we're not going to do the work, but we fully expect this is a very small business, and we don't think they're going to make it. And we didn't tell them that, but we've written all of that revenue off. Papa Murphy's, everybody knows Papa Murphy's. It's a national chain. We're going to see national chains, restaurant chains going out of business. Do you think that's true? Somebody say yes.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
So we don't know if Papa Murphy's going to go out of business, but all of you know Red Lobster's out and that kind of thing. And so we don't know that they're going to go out of business, so we didn't write them off, but we do know that they're going to be cash poor. All restaurants are going to be cash poor. And so if you do restaurants, I promise you they will be putting their projects on hold. And so we pushed that revenue by 2 months. On the projects that we proposed, we have high probability of getting and discounting the revenue. We didn't take a discount on the revenue because we're already discounting it pretty significantly. We also didn't take a discount in the probability of us getting this work. Instead, we did it not in the formulas, but downstream in the revenue calculation. And so I won't go over all of these. Richland Bible Church, we're being optimistic, and we're pushed the revenue out by 5 months. Now, churches are getting slammed by this, and for obvious reasons. And so churches could be canceling projects. This project may not go. But even if it does go, we've pushed the revenue out by 5 months, and we've got a hedge here is that we're saying in the next 12 months we're only going to get $50,000 of that revenue. Great American Tower is an office building, and we've pushed that out by 2 months. We don't think that's going to get stopped. Ritz-Carlton in La Jolla, that is a remodel, renovation kind of thing, and so we do think that's still going to happen. We pushed that out 2 months. This is Zymed office, Zymed medical building. We've pushed that a little bit. Four Seasons Hotel, we do a lot of Ritz-Carltons and Four Seasons all over the world. Right now, we're not changing our projection on that significantly because it was already not going to start for about 9 months. It's a large design build job. But we're very, very worried about the hospitality industry. So we're staying close to seeing what the hell's going to happen there. Kaiser Permanente, we know that they still are going to do projects like this little $152,000 remodel, but we're also equally sure that they're going to do a lot of moving around with their capital allocations and budgets. And so a job like this might go away with Kaiser as well. But we expect it'll get replaced by something else as it does go away. So we didn't change that revenue. And then this PAC Center NBC, we wrote it off. So what we did was we went through and looked at all of our jobs, every single one of them, and we asked ourselves, where do we think this job's going? And we revised our revenue projection. And so in doing so, now you can see at the bottom, and I'll flip back and forth now between the two screens. Now you can see at the bottom in May through August, we were looking pretty good in this division. A little light in May, but essentially for the next 4 months, we were solid, and we needed to worry about September, and then it was going to come back up again, and then we're going to have another lull, October, November, December, another lull in January. But pretty much, if you look at that revenue projection for this division, we were pretty good for this year in this division, with just a couple little bumps in September and January. And this division manager had no concerns about him filling those bumps in, nor did I. I didn't have any concerns with that at all. This is now our changed picture in this division. We're now good in May. We were, $60,000, $70,000 short, but we're good because that one project we know is getting pulled forward. We're still good in June and July to the tune of about 100,000, but look where we were before, right? And so now we're good, but we're less good. And then look at the rest of this year for this division. We're fucking destroyed. And so 100, 100, 100, 100. And so we're about $100,000 light in projections from May, June, July, August, September, October, November. And then in December, we're showing $400,000 off our revenue mark, another 400 grand here in December. And you can see that. And so here's a question now to everybody. Two questions. First of all, does everybody understand what we did and why?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Is anybody willing to admit that you haven't done this in that level of detail in your company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, have not done this.
Does anybody who hasn't done it think that maybe it would be a good idea to do it?
Most definitely.
Yes.
Yep.
A yearly budget, but not like that.
Say again?
I always do a yearly budget.
Yeah.
And it's all based on what we know we've signed and what we're going to get, and what we're going to do, but it's not, I don't know that it's to that detail. I wanna
Okay.
look at it versus what I already do.
Okay. So the next question is I plan on putting this into Dropbox, so y'all have it. Would y'all like to have this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. I'll put this in Dropbox. This is a simplified version of the tool that we use, and put on your action item. You got to go and do this because this is going to tell you where you're at from a revenue standpoint, and then of course it should spur you on to be making those immediate decisions from a marketing sales standpoint that you need to be doing. But it's not just marketing and sales. How else? Once you do this, if you come up in your company, in your division, with, for example, numbers like this, lots of red 3 or 4 months from now, what else? Well, tell me, what do you need to do? If you come up with lots of red like that, what do you need to do?
You're probably cutting overhead or cutting costs, cutting salaries. You're looking to reduce costs from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure, cutting costs, and I talked about that last week and the week before too, is that the way we're looking at this is that whatever our revenue shortfall is, that actually it's cash flow, but I'll talk more about that next week. Whatever our shortfall is, we're cutting our overhead and our costs by 5% more. So let's say this netted out to a 15% decrease in revenue, or when we're talking about next week, cash flow, we're going to cut our costs. We will cut our costs. We have to cut our costs by 20%, as an example. Why?
You have the lag, you have to cut it. It's the race don't chase, right?
Yeah, well, you can't get blood from a stone, right? I mean, if you are doing this, if you're doing the work, you gotta have the cash, right? And so it's I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. So one is, this informs you on what you should be selling. It also, I think, should informs you on going and talking to your customers, like I've talked about last week, communicating with your customers right away about projects and about cash flow and those kinds of things. One, to reassure them, and two, so that you get your numbers right. But who else? What else should you be doing if you do a revenue projection like this and you see these kind of numbers, other than cutting costs?
Well, Kirk, I was going to ask if you're going to be pursuing added costs for the schedule changes that you're experiencing.
For sure. We're going to be doing that. Yeah. And so we'll talk more about that a little bit when we talk about what I call COVID-19 change orders. And we will talk about that, just not tonight. So absolutely, we're going to be going after the additional cost caused by this. Now, everyone here needs to know, and we talked briefly about last week, is that, of course, your customers are going to push back on this because they don't have the money for it either. So absolutely, and should we be successful, or where we are successful in securing the signed change orders for that, then that clearly will help our revenue picture. It will certainly help our revenue picture. You could, in fact, already be influencing your revenue projections by anticipating some of those change orders. In fact, you should be, because by definition, revenue is your cost, direct cost plus indirect cost plus profit. And so you are already incurring additional cost right now in the form of lost productivity on jobs. And we already talked about that last week, is that's in this tune of most people are experiencing 20 to 25% decreases in productivity from a minimum of 30 minutes a day per man to I had people telling me just a couple of days ago they're losing half a day to this because of the measure. The other way that it needs to should inform you is you got to be talking to your lenders right now. You got to be thinking about credit lines. You got to be thinking about cost of money, and you've got to be doing this. It is not, if you try to go to your bank in June or in July or August this summer, if you try to go to your bank in June or June through August, so second quarter, right? The second or third quarter, you're going to be way too late, because the worst possible time to be trying to increase your credit line is when you need the money. And so I encourage you to think right now about bolstering your line of credit. I'm not a debt guy. This is the cash flow issue. And so if you haven't already been talking to your bank, you are behind the curve. So, all right. What other comments or questions or thoughts do you have on this?
So are you taking the let's say you're winding up in the red, so you're looking at the red. So if you're trying to find quick hitters or quick projects that you're talking to, are you also looking at reducing overall margin at that point, just to swallow that up?
All right, good. That's a really good question, Tyler. And for us, our answer is no. That's almost never the way that we go, right? And that's a really good question. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to type on the screen here while I'm answering Tyler's question, right? And so this is one of those fundamental things in business that people often get wrong. And so earned revenue is equal to direct cost. I'm just going to do a real quick example in response to that question. Earned revenue is equal to direct cost, plus indirect cost, plus profit. So I'm going to do an example. So let's say I had, just pull numbers out of my ass here. So let's say I had, let's take a small job. So let's say I had $80,000 of direct costs planned for earned revenue. And then my indirects was, just to make it easy, $15,000. And, I'll do it the way most of you do. I'm just going to do a percentage instead. So I'm going to change that cell to a percentage. And that'd be great indirect cost to have. But let's do it this way. Let's say your overhead's 12%, and then let's say that I want to make 20% profit on this. So I'll change that cell as well. All right, so that's the nut we're trying to crack. And this is also why I'll fire project managers. So my number one reason for firing a project manager is not supporting the craftsman in the field, because that's commandment number one in our company. The second reason I'll fire a project manager if I can't teach he or she to make accurate projections over time. And so our direct cost on this job is was planned to be $80,000. And so the indirects of 12% gives us that. And then move this down. So our total cost is then equal to 89,600. I'm sorry, 89,600, and then our profit on that is equal to that times that. And so then our sell price for this job is equal to 89,000 plus that. All right, so everybody gets that. And so let's say I sold this job for 107,520, and so my earned revenue eventually on this job is 107,520. All right, so Tyler's question is okay, so you see all that red, is the way to get revenue then to decrease your sales price. Now, of course, if we decreased our sale price, that would be, it doesn't change your direct cost. It doesn't change your profit. I'm sorry, it doesn't change your indirect cost. And so let's say I change this to 15%. Well, then that changed my sales price to $103,000. And so maybe that makes me a little bit more competitive in the marketplace. That's not what, in my company, that's not a viable strategy, because, tell me why. Anybody, tell me why. Lowering my price to get the work to cover a revenue shortfall isn't a good strategy in my company. Why?
You're still supporting the same amount of indirect costs. So
Yeah.
It's costing you more to do the same work.
Yeah, so you're still supporting the same amount of indirect costs. And what else do we know in COVID is happening to our direct costs?
Yeah, those are increasing as well. So you're losing in two spots.
Yeah, so let's say let's say what this works out to be is let's say let's say half of my revenue is non-labor. So that's the $40,000, but my labor's gone up by, let's say we're losing 25% of it, right? So this is plus 40,000 times 1.25. So now my direct cost has actually gone up by $10,000 in this example. That doesn't change my overhead at all. So I want to do that. There's my overhead, and so that's $108,000. And so now, without anything happening at all, if I sell this job less than what I would have sold it before, before this all this red, I'm actually going out of pocket. And so now, let's say that I only want to, let's say I got to get revenue, so I'm going to go ahead and take it cheap. So I'll go ahead and change my my profit percentage, my gross profits percentage down here to 10%. So now I'm going to do this plus this times this is that right? Now I need to do this. Sorry, do this. Yeah, so my new total should be equals my new job cost ought to be this. Sorry, guys. Should be that plus that, which is now 100,800. And so if I only put 10% profit on it, that times that, which now means my new sell price is to only make 10% gross profit is $110,000. And so to answer your question, Tyler, it's not going to get you there, right? So what we need to do instead is what? Not going to be able to cut your way out, cut your price to solve this problem. What you have to do?
Increase your price.
Well, what you got to do is you got to change your market, right? So what I'm going to be selling, when I look at this mess of, what's on the screen, all of this red right here, I'm going to shift my market focus from lower margin new construction projects or even lower margin renovation and retrofit. I'm going to go into maintenance. I'm going to go into service, and I'm going to be heavily investing in that side of my company because I need these 40% jobs there where I can go ahead and sell $40,000 worth of work at 40%, or let's make that $60,000 at 40%. And so now I start to approximate those revenues that I needed. So I'm forcing it now, but you can see the idea here. So obviously sell less work at higher margin is going to be what gets me here, not the other way around. So I think that's almost always true, but I think that's certainly going to be true now. It's not going to be in new construction. It's not going to happen. What's the problem with, let's say I see all this red right here, to Tyler's question, what's the problem if I go ahead and do the revenue projection and I see all this red and I lower my prices to cover that loss? What's the problem with that? Anybody, what's the problem with that?
Well, it could accelerate your demise.
Yeah, more than likely it's going to celebrate your demise, because the problem is, and it's true whether it's COVID or not, when you sell a bad job, you live with it forever. Yes. You live with all the way through closeout. And so now we're talking revenue. That means you're going to build that project, but we're not talking at all about cash flows and customers who go out of business and those kinds of things. And so if in fact it turns out that you shouldn't take the work at lower prices, what's the other thing that you should consider doing? The obvious answer. What's the other obvious answer? It's so obvious. I got 50 people giving to me. What's the obvious answer?
Sell a better value.
Do nothing.
Yeah. So, for sure, nothing. No, the other option, folks, is dramatically shrink your business as fast as possible. Is that a valid and viable option?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Folks, if you're not thinking about that, if you're and I've got all kinds of different size contractors, and if you're a smaller contractor and you're not thinking of that right now, you have your head in the sand and you're thinking that we're going to, like I said last week, are you Hoover? Not Hoover. Are you Herbert Hoover? Are you Franklin Roosevelt? If you aren't entertaining the idea that one thing you might have to do and do it sooner rather than later is to dramatically shrink your business or your division or your business unit, you are 3 or 4 weeks behind the curve. And what will happen to people who don't come to that conclusion if their numbers are red like I showed? What will happen? Not maybe, what will happen?
Business.
You're done. You're done. And so we're a bunch of contractors on this call. I'm here to tell you this isn't just going to happen with contractors. It's going to happen all across our country to small businesses. Do you think that's true? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so.
No doubt about it. The Fed is projecting that. Everybody is projecting that. Who is in this business? The bank is projecting that. We're already looking now at what percentage are write-offs and those things. This is not doom and gloom. This is just how to be strategic and thinking about what's coming. And so let's do that. Let's be strategic. All right. So now I've unshared my screen. I want to come back to the outline for tonight, and I want to let you know where we're at. And so just to update everybody. So we've gone through the first 3 Roman numerals there. We have not gotten into the 4th part yet, which we're still going to do. I do want to come back to you, Philip, though, because there's a couple more pages I want to look on yours. So, Philip, can you take back the screen and put your presentation back up there?
Sure. Let me do that right now. Okay, can you see it?
Not yet. Yes, yeah, we can. It's up there now.
Okay.
Can you cover slides 13 through 15, please?
Sure. Let me go there. So 13 is essentially on the what was described earlier on the cash management and the special risk. So essentially, you need to manage your days outstanding, your sales outstanding. Essentially, you got to work with the client and make sure that your payments are done. You make sure you're invoicing. Hopefully, if you're savvy enough and you have it in your agreement, you're invoicing in advance. Generally, it's recommended in the industrial side at least 30 days in advance.
Yeah. All right, so we'll dig into cash flow more next week because I want to give a cash flow spreadsheet too and some graphs. And so let's go to the next slide because I really like this slide a lot. Slide 14 because it adds a lot. So I go ahead and talk about these and actually go ahead and walk through each of these because these, go ahead and take it away, Phil.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Let me move my little boxes here so I don't block here. So essentially, these are the cost categories for recording suspension or partial suspension on your project. Again, you got to look at your additional direct costs to stop, and you really need to look at a lot of factors in there. It's not just your labor. It's your contracts for like cleaning services. I don't know if you have any site prep, logistics, anything related to that. I don't know, small tools, rentals that you have. Additional costs for managing the claim. Do you need to have somebody like a claims representative, some sort of a contracts administrator that specializes in construction claims within your organization or externally hired? Again, additional indirect costs to stop. Again, your vendor production lost your lost vendor production slots there. Additional direct costs while stop is your storage or your warehousing, your maintenance, and I should state in there your preservation, especially if you have mechanical type of equipment that you need to have preservation done, meaning it needs to be rotated or lubricated or somehow energized. That needs to be taken care of. Additional rental spaces of offices, specifically your extension of bonds and your cost of capital. These are some of the areas you need to look at, as well as the indirect side of that. While stop is your overhead to the project. Basically, your team is forced to stop. What do you do in a case such as our case? You still have folks in the offices that are still there. Let's say, especially if you're an international project and you have expatriates, what do you do with those expatriates? Your quarantine costs, as we discussed before in the other presentations that the other folks had. And then you got to look at your additional direct costs to restart. You need to have these all in the change order. And as well as documented additional costs due to any new legislations that are in effect. If you have any physicians on site or any medical personnel, your masks, your disinfections, and again on your transportations for the restart. And the indirect side is your increase in labor. And, again, it depends on when you restart. If all these job sites at a particular area start at the same time, how are you going to get your craft labor? How are you going to get your professional services and your, those are things. And of course, your material shortages.
Yeah.
That's another thing to consider.
Good. So let's hold on this slide for a second, Philip, because to everybody out there, I like the slides so much because so many of us, I think Philip used the word tactical at the beginning of the night tonight. As I talked about last week, most companies are still in the tactical mode and haven't even moved to the strategic mode. But you've got to get to moving to the strategic mode because as it already exists in our industry is really bad at actually identifying and recovering all of its additional costs just on the regular run-of-the-mill change order. This is that squared. And so you need to be moving aggressively towards putting together your own version of a COVID-19 change order format to address all the kinds of costs that Philip has in this slide. And maybe as a group, we can do that. Maybe we ought to take that on as a group task to come up with a really good COVID standard additional cost caused by COVID change order format. I think that any of y'all think that would be a good idea?
Actually, for me, Kirk, what I would like to see, and I know we have a lot of subcontractors in the call, is for your line of business or for your products that you do, whether it's electrical or mechanical, it would be nice to see all the specifics on that.
That's a great comment, Philip, is that, so what Philip's asked for, and I know we've got at least 3 or 4 other GCs on this call. Steve Bartram is one. Well, Steve's, yeah. So anyway, there's a few other people who act like CMs or GCs. I think that's a great idea because, again, thinking about how do we add value to our customers? We've already, most of you, I'm sure all of you are already communicating with your customers about the tactical things. Are we going to be on the job? Is this essential? Are we not going to be on the job? How much productivity are we losing because of these measures? What are all of our safety measures and all that? But I would even be willing to bet that most of you have not even begun to communicate formally to your customers about what impacts we're having I love Philip's idea is because how we're MEP, right? So in my company, we're MEP. So how we could be helping our customers is not just letting them know, but showing them specifically these are the categories where we are experiencing additional costs. And while we don't have all of those costs yet, don't even really know magnitude of scale, here's what we're projecting and thinking they're going to be. And I think that's what Philip just said would be useful. If he had one of those from each of his different types of subtrades, that would be useful. That's what you said, right, Philip?
Absolutely. And also to keep in mind, I know it's a lot of North American concentric, and quite candidly, I always tell this story and I won't go too long, but my original plan in construction was to stay in North America, but events like this required me to go overseas about 30 years ago. But what's really important now is, let's say the work and the regulations and laws and some of these other global construction sites open up, and versus they might not as open up as fast here in North America or in the United States. This presents you an opportunity to start doing global work.
Yeah. Well, that's a great comment, because that's again, thinking about strategically is where do we go with the markets? Where are the markets? And so something to think about. So I've made an action item here, and I won't push any more here tonight, but I think that if we collaborate as a group in this additional formatting, I think that can be so depending on time, I may take a crack at it. If anybody else takes a crack at it, maybe what I'll do is I'll draft a first draft of it and then throw it out to the group to modify and make it better. If I do, all right, now we're evolving to a commitment. If I do a draft, will you guys actually give input and help us to come up with a better draft? Yeah, will you do that, or should I just go to my company and say fuck y'all?
Yes, if you do a draft, at least Kirk, from my side, I can look at it from a viewpoint of an industrial EPC contractor and put my nuances in there.
All right, what about the rest of the subcontractors out there? Are you going to help with this, or should I just make it proprietary?
I'll be willing.
Yes.
All right, good. All right, see, I like that. So just like I'm your date, even if you lie to me, as long as I believe the lie, we're good. So all right, good. Philip, slip on the next screen. I have that one listed too. I don't remember what's on that slide.
Okay, this one here is the types of costs and delays. These are just a sample.
All right, we're just talking about that. All right, so let's hold on that. All right, Philip, let's go ahead and pull that back down, because I thank you for that.
Sure.
To everybody, what I would love to have every week is people who have been on this call putting stuff together like this, and you throw up in the Dropbox, or you have on your screen to show us what you're doing, whether it's a form or a presentation like Philip. I think that you all think that that's helpful. Somebody say yes.
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 Right. Yes. Thank you. All right, good. Okay. So I want to go to the economic piece of it now, because that's a critical piece to us getting to the strategy discussion on this in this class. And so I'm gonna change my order just a little bit. I'm gonna do item D first, and item D on the PowerPoint is PPP applications and update. So last week we talked quite a bit about the stimulus programs, and at 12:01 last Friday morning, Bank of America went live, and it's amazing. I heard so much stuff the next day from contractors, but like I say, I'm on the phone all day with contractors. People saying, "Well, it's not up yet. The system's not up yet." That's just not true. The Bank of America was taking applications on Friday, and not only we get ours in, but I helped 5 other companies get theirs in. And so it's possible that whoever you're talking to at the bank that you're working with just doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And so you have to be persistent. This is a gigantic cluster, you know what? No doubt about it. It's the government is in disarray. The SBA is in disarray. The banks are in disarray. But like I said last week, the money's already gone. I said it would be, and it is. And so Wells Fargo, for example, shut their applications down, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday. Bank of America has shut their applications down. But what I'm putting on the screen, and then I'm also going to put in Dropbox, is the spreadsheet that I was using to make the calculations to apply for these loans. And the reason I'm giving them to you is that we're going to have another tranche come out. I think they're close to levying out another 350 billion, which in the grand scheme is not much. The Federal Reserve said that what really needs to happen is about $2 trillion of this just for this level, just for small businesses. So anyway, I'm going to walk you through real quickly. Well, let me ask you a question first. If you're, yeah.
Kirk, if you don't mind me mentioning this, maybe you already know and maybe the others know, what's happening now where there is some activity, at least I've seen in our industry and also in the infrastructure side, is we're having a lot of consultants and a lot of bankers now, like McKinsey, KPMG, and those folks are doing conceptual studies on seeing the feasibility of whether a plant should go or not, or whether a project should go or not. So that's where the activity is right now. So, about June time, we're going to have project managers that want to get some work, and they're going to start politicking to start up these jobs.
Absolutely. No, yeah, well, absolutely. And there's a lot of strategy involved in that. On the stimulus piece, well, I'll just ask the group. If it's interested, then I'll show it to you. If not, are you guys interested in me taking 5 minutes and walking you through how, if you're going to apply for one of these loans, the backup you need to do that? It'll only take 5 minutes.
Yes.
Are you interested in hearing about that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm interested.
All right, good. So this is for remember, there's two programs, right? And so this is for the PPP program. And the maximum amount that you can get there is for the first tranche was $10 million. And so here's a spreadsheet that I put together, and it looks like this. On the notes pages, here is where I'm tying it to where this shows up in the program. And so you can see, everything in red here is a footnote, and it ties back to the PPP program. And this was coordinated with Bank of America at a high level. And so I know this is how Bank of America is looking at it. And so really simple spreadsheet. And so go ahead, and your FTE employees as of the date of the loan. And in this case, there's 492. You put their wages in. And again, you see all the footnotes here. This is where it's referenced in the CARES Act. And this is the page reference for it. This is our footnote for what our justification is, not ours and Bank of America. So here's all your wages, less employee owner wages in excess of $100,000. Here's your group healthcare benefits, insurance premiums. Here's the payment of retirement benefits, payment of employer payroll taxes. And so you get the idea here. Contract labor and so forth gets us down to prior 12 months cumulative qualifying payroll. So all of you should have this information readily available at your fingertips in your accounting system. Then it's just an average, right? So average monthly payroll costs, and so that's just math. Then you can borrow up to 2.5 times that. And of course that, and you should, in my opinion, you should be getting at Business 101. Get as much low interest money or free money as you can get, period. It doesn't make any sense to do anything different. We talked about that last week. And so for this company, I was helping 2.5 times that is just about $11.5 million. The maximum allowed by this program was $10 million. And so we're going in for the $10 million. Now, remember, we're expecting half of that money to be forgiven because that's what the act says. And so here's the calculation of loan forgiveness. FTE at the end of the period, 592. And so that's obviously a higher number. So we're estimating rehiring plus adding because we're going to grow. You see all the numbers there, the benefits that go along with that. So you can see how we calculated the potential loan forgiveness. And so remember, up here, the amount we came up with was 11.5 million. Now they're only going to lend us $10 million, but the calculation here on the loan forgiveness is more than half because this $6 million here is based on the revenue that we were projecting at the higher value. And that is kosher per the CARES Act. And so that's $6.2 million. And so you get the idea here. And so then we pull out the other things that the act will allow us to do. And so we're borrowing 10 million, and we're expecting just over $5 million to be forgiven. And so what we're going to have to pay back is about $4.9 million. And so that's 0.5 interest due in 2 years because it's all deferred. And so that's the spreadsheet. And this is what Bank of America is using, and this is what we're using. So my action item for you is go ahead and do this right now, even though the money's all gone, because there's another bucket of about the same size coming out. Congress hasn't approved that yet, and the president hasn't signed it yet. But folks, it's coming, and there probably will be something that comes behind this. And at the worst, what you'll have to do is just go ahead and make the changes to the subsidy. I don't think they're going to change it a lot because, frankly, the government is inside. I mean, think about the nightmare of administering this. So we shouldn't be too hard on the Small Business Administration and the banks because this is a freaking nightmare to administer, and nobody has seen the kind of volume that we're seeing with this. Even the bureaucrats who are always easy and quick to criticize. And so I think people are working their ass off right now, even at the federal government. And your job is to not. My job is not bitch about bureaucrats and about government. My job is real simple. As a capitalist, it's to do what for my company? Anybody? What's my job? What's your job?
Make money, stay afloat.
Yeah, your job is to first survive and to second to thrive. And I think you're foolish if you don't learn this lesson quickly on how to go and get some of this money. I think that's just if you were my manager or a business unit leader, I would be very unhappy with you if you said, "Well, it's too complicated to figure out," and we're not going to mess with it. We don't borrow a lot of money. We carry, we're usually 0 days on the line of credit. Folks, you got serious cash crunches coming. I'll repeat that. You got serious cash crunches coming. We've shown that earlier tonight, the revenue projections. Don't screw around with this. On that note, I'm going to jump down to another piece. This, I apologize, is a blurry slide. It's a blurry slide because I cut it from their website. And so I do have the website, so I have the source, but I didn't go and get the pretty graphic. But y'all need to see this. This is from Green Street Advisors, who is a VC in California. And this they put this out on March 28th. So this is now 11 days old. And so this is how coronavirus is hitting the commercial real estate market. So they're not. These are both actuals and then by extension their projection. So senior housing, and so if you're doing senior living facilities, they're projecting a 49% loss in that sector. Skilled nursing, 38%. Now we're talking commercial real estate, so we're talking construction, right? Skilled nursing they're projecting down by 38%, lodging by 36%, gaming by 35%, student housing 30%, malls 29%, manufactured homes 28%, strip centers 24%, offices and apartments down by 23%, life sciences and single family rentals down by 19%, medical office by 18%, self-storage by 16%, cell tower 13%, and data centers by 11%. So, and you can find right now, this is what Philip was talking about. You can find all kinds of information on the internet, and I'm not talking bullshit information. I'm talking about McKinsey. I'm talking about Bain. I'm talking about Deloitte. We're talking about the big consulting firms whose job is to make accurate projections about what's going on in the real estate and therefore the commercial sector. And so my action item to all of you would be to tie it back to what we talked about earlier tonight, tie it back to your revenue projections. And if you're in these sectors, you should be thinking about downgrading your revenue projections in parallels to these numbers, for sure.
Kirk,
go ahead.
It's not really associated with this in a sense, but I'm curious to see what the subcontractors in North America are saying is, do you think after this pandemic, there'll be a less reliance on, especially in construction in North America and the United States, on global sources and more activity and within North America, i.e. getting the materials from overseas? I know there's been a pressure on the subs a lot in these couple of years.
So you're talking about sourcing materials and equipment?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we already, for most people on this call, most people on this call are mechanical and electrical. Most people on this call, actually, a lot of our materials and equipment actually already are sourced internationally. Do you all agree with that to a fair degree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm definitely getting some issues with procurement of our materials, of our equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, we're already starting to see supply chain issues hit. And we talked a little bit last week about what's going to be the best approach to that. And so obviously, I think to everybody on the call, lean construction, just-in-time sourcing is always, has in fact been the strategy you followed in recent decades, I hope, or certainly recent years. And that's still always the best practices because of handling and storage and theft and damage and all those kind of things. But if now with the coming supply chain issues, that just blows all of that up. And last week, I know someone spoke about how their customer has already gone ahead and directed them to go ahead and take delivery. I think it was a school district, take delivery on the materials and equipment for the work they're going to be doing this summer. And that's good. That shows a lot of foresight on the part of the owner. Of course, that works if the owner is willing to pay for stored materials. And so it's incumbent on all of us to get to our owners as quickly as possible and make that recommendation to them to, if that's the path you choose to take, is to go ahead and order the materials and equipment to get them on the job site. Now, you're also going to have the conversation with them about the cost for storage and handling and all those kind of things. And for me, I'm going to try to twist the arms of my suppliers, as we often do anyway, for them to have the materials stored at their facilities. I don't want to take these materials. Now that gets into the conversation is some owners don't have a problem. Well, three different categories. There's the category of owners who don't have a problem with paying for materials stored on site. But then there's a certain set of customers who will pay for stored on site, but won't pay for stored at your supplier's house. So now you've got to convince them to do that. And then there's those that don't want to pay for stored materials at all. So you've got some education and some convincing to do. And of course, what levers should you pull when you go to try to convince your customer to go ahead and take delivery of materials now and pay you for that? What lever do you have to pull? It's a real simple lever.
The future delay if the materials.
Yeah, it's about schedules. And so you should be making projections relative to schedules and say, look, we're seeing this. And I've made a note to myself to bring some data in next week on supply chain and how we're already seeing with our manufacturers and suppliers impacts of supply chain. So I'll bring some data next week. Then you can take that data to your customer and say, look, if you don't release me right now to release these materials and then promise to pay for these materials, this is what it's going to do to your schedule. You should be doing that right now to showing them that they're not going to be hitting their dates. Now that gets into our conversation from last week about contracts and force majeure and all that. And we're not going to go back to that right now, although we will go back to it.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nick here in Wisconsin. So the biggest thing that we've seen for holdup has been in our elevator subcontractors.
Okay.
A lot of the parts are coming from obviously China or overseas here, but their big shutdown really put us kind of in a pinch.
Yeah. So elevators we already know it's. Thank you for that. You're going to see it across the board. So, for example, as an electrical contractor, getting frickin' switchgear as it was already a disaster. Would you all agree, electricians?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, switchgear was already a disaster. It's going to be compounded exponentially now on the mechanical side, chillers, things like that. So I will find what data I can get from all kinds of different manufacturers here between now and next week, and I'll share that with you, because then that will give you a tool to take to your customers. You all should be thinking about playing with your scheduling, thinking about how will we do a pro forma schedule projection for our customers relative to supply chain. I got to write that down. I love the way that sounded. A pro forma, because we need to do that. A pro forma scheduled impacts caused by supply chain of major manufacturers. Because again, those people who are thinking Hoover-like are thinking, well, May 1st, the country's going to open back up again. We're going to go to work. Yeah, no. We're going to have supply chain issues for the next 2 years, probably, easily the next 2 years. So, all right. So homework for all of us. So that was the Green Street Advisors. I gave you the PPP tool. I don't think I need to pull it up, and I've given you a link. Everybody knows what the job. Now I hope you're paying attention to the jobs report every Thursday now, and so now the jobs report comes out every Thursday. What did it say today?
Was 6.6 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
it's 10%, wasn't it?
Another 6.6 million people filed this week. So that means now for 3 weeks, only 3 weeks, 16 million Americans have filed for unemployment. That's just in the last 3 weeks. Now, tell me more. Y'all are smart people. Tell me more. Think like a manager. Think like a financial manager. What does 16 million actually project you? I'm not talking about families now. I'm talking about this. If we have 16 million new unemployment filings, how does that translate in the real marketplace? So we know at least 16 million more are out of work. Does it mean 16 million more out of work, or does it mean more?
I would say more because of employees going under modified schedules and things of that nature as well, too.
Yeah, so you should factor that number by 25 to 50%, because there are the people that can't file for unemployment because they haven't been employed long enough, people who just started jobs, they're not eligible, and there's also all other forms. And so from now on, weekly, when you're paying attention to that jobs number, you should factor by somewhere between, create a range, a bandwidth of between 25 to 50%. So now really instead of 16 million, we're looking at 20 to 30 million new unemployed people this week. I'm not going to talk about the ramifications of that. We did all that last week. And so if you're new to this class, go and listen to last week's recording and last week's discussion, and then bring whatever questions you have up. But and we're expecting next week to have similar numbers. And so the flood is on. The projections are the dire projections are 30 to 33% unemployment in the U.S., which of course is horrific. All right, so that was the jobs report, the PPP app. So now I want to go to another much more detailed presentation on the economy, and I want to start that. And I don't think Armin is on tonight. I'm not sure where he's at, but Armin, are you on tonight? Got to ask. I don't think he is. All right, so let me change this, because after we talked last week, Armin went and put together a really nice presentation on the economy. So let me pull that up. Sorry. All right. And all this, of course, will be in Dropbox. All right, and so he started with, yeah, you can see that. So he started with just some introductions about how the cases have spread, and so this data is now on this slide is actually now a couple of weeks old. We all know now that I haven't looked at it because I don't have it on my TV behind me. But we know that by tomorrow we'll be at 500,000 cases and in the United States alone. This is just information about the virus and about the spread. This is now this starts to get into the GDP impact of COVID-19, public health response, and economic policies. And so you can see ineffective interventions, partially effective interventions, and highly effective interventions. And you can see the various curves there. And so you might want to take a look at that. This is an easier to read slide. And so this is some projections on global economies, and this is from McKinsey. And so everybody knows McKinsey in partnership with Oxford Economics. And if you don't know them, they are a gold standard in economic data. And so this is looking at real GDP drop from fourth quarter 2019 through the end of second quarter this year. And so, of course, we're in the second quarter now. And so looking at a 3.3 drop in China, an 8-point drop in the US, 4.9 globally, and in Europe, a 9.5 drop. When you look at 2020 GDP overall, we're looking in the US of 2.4. And what this survey was showing is predicting the time to return to the pre-crisis growth levels is fourth quarter 2020. Now, I'll say something that I typically quickly discount anytime anybody says it, so I won't say it that way. What I was going to say was I don't believe that these numbers, I don't believe that we're going to get to return to pre-crisis growth numbers in fourth quarter USA. Now, you shouldn't give a shit about what I believe, and I don't give a shit about what you believe. I care about facts and data. And so I just used the wrong word. The bank on which I'm on the board and the utility company on which I serve on the board, we have different numbers that we're looking at than these numbers, and we think we're going to be in negative growth throughout 2020 and perhaps into Q1, and we don't see positive growth happening until Q1 of 2021 at the earliest, and we're acting accordingly in both of those places. So it's not about me believing, that's the data we're looking at. So even if you are looking at different data, you at least have this data to look at, and so you should be thinking about your projections based on that. This is I don't expect you to consume this while it's on the screen here, but I certainly would expect you to look at it when you get off, and what's in it for you is looking at what the projected growth is in whatever sector that you're in. And so I'm not going to blow it up for time and level of detail, but for each sector, it's showing the changes in growth. And so weighted average year-to-date local currency, blah, blah, blah. Market cap has declined across sectors and shows the variation on the declines. This gives us the hardest hit sectors that may not see a restart until 2021. I think this is useful for everybody on this call. And so commercial airlines, we're looking at not recovering or not even restarting until Q3, Q4 of 2021. Average change of stock price, 44%. Air and travel, so this is hotels and those kinds of things, Q1, Q2. Insurance carriers down by 33%. Q4 of 2020, oil and gas down a lot, not recovering, not beginning to restart until Q3, and you get the idea. So I don't need to keep reading it. Tell me how you having this slide, if you don't have this slide, helps you.
Where you're forecasting and knowing which clients and which lines to target.
Yeah, and so if you're in any of these sectors, it's telling you what we're predicting is going to happen. If you're not in these sectors, now this is the wrong slide for this statement, but on other slides I show you which slides which will restart and be more robust. Well, then you should strategically be thinking about what sectors to get into. Now here's the question. All right, so now we think of tactics versus strategy. Now we're moving our conversation back to the thriving part of the discussion. let's say right now you're heavily in, let's say you're doing a Boeing facility and you're doing something for Exxon and you're doing a Ritz-Carlton. Let's say those are your sectors. So that means you're in aerospace, you're in oil and gas, and you're in hospitality. Now, your customers, who we all know and love, and I'm talking end user customers here, I'm talking Boeing, I'm talking Ritz, and I'm talking Exxon. They're all going to be telling you what? Remember the participation part of the class, folks. And so I'd like to hear, and there's no wrong answers. So I always like to hear from other people. And so if you're working for Boeing, Exxon, and Ritz, what are they going to be telling you?
They're going to want longer payment terms on orders.
Maybe longer payment terms. They're going to be telling you
have jobs.
They're going to be telling you the jobs that are on the books. Well, yeah, let's say in Ritz, or I'd say you do hotels. I'm the Ritz-Carlton. Oh, yeah, Kirk. That project you showed there that you're going to be doing for us. Now, if you remember, I forget, it was one of the little jobs, the big jobs. Doesn't matter. They're going to be telling me, oh, no. As soon as, this economy is going to start to recover, and man, we need hotel beds, hotel rooms, and we're going to get right back to work. And so you just hang in there, and it's just going to get pushed back by 3 or 4 months. What does the data tell you?
That's not the case. And even if it would happen, it wouldn't happen exactly at Q3 and Q4. It's going to be a spread.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want some of it. So Philip's helping me a lot tonight, and I appreciate that. I want somebody else. I don't have to pull you up and call you out. How should this inform your behavior? How should this kind of data inform your behavior?
Well, it allows you to push back.
Well, not just push back. If the guy's been promising you, let's say the guy's been dating you for a year and a half, and been promising to put a ring in your finger, and you're sitting around waiting for him to put a ring in your finger, you're a fool. You need to bring the ultimatum to fore and say, however you should always handle your customers properly. But if you got back in 3 sectors that you're seeing, not just in one place, but many places, that you're seeing the predictions that those sectors are not going to recover in the next 9 months or 12 months, the only thing that you need to, the most important thing you should be doing is what? You got to do what, folks?
You got to move on.
Yeah. It goes back to the quote. I forget his name. Frank somebody. He was a bank robber, right? It was not Jesse James. It was Frank somebody. And they asked him why he robs banks, and the answer was what?
That's where the money is.
So that's where the money is, right? And so, folks, yes, listen to your customers, but no, don't listen to your customers. Your strategy needs to be based on data and market conditions, and you need to go to where the money is, and which means you gotta bust your ass and not just do all the things you're doing already right now relative to customers and contracts and cash flow and all the things we're talking about. You got to be looking and saying, what's the recovery look like for these industries? And you got to be mining those industries and going to where the money is. And so this next slide is making hard decisions on immediate challenges. And so for example, we were talking earlier about supply chains, and so that's the second column here. And so supply chain is shifting from initial concern about China restarting to continuing logistics issues, a concern about macro environment impact on demand planning. And so what you should be doing is conducting scenario plannings to understand how inventory buffer changes is going to change for your company. And so you can see that list. And so this is an action item list of things you ought to be doing with your employees, with your supply chain, with your customers, relative to immediate liquidity, and technology. And so I have no doubt in my mind that for the majority of contractors in the United States, that you aren't taking a formal approach to looking at each of these issues. And I know you're not, and I know the reason you're not isn't because of lack of education or lack of will. It's because you're so busy running as hard as you can right now that you can't even get to these things. And it's also because, frankly, in our industry, in the construction industry, most of us are not data driven in our marketing and our selling. Most of us are not strategic in our strategic planning, and are not formal in our strategic planning. And this is the time when we're going to find out who learns the lessons of how to do those things, which is, of course, a big reason why we're doing the class. The last couple of slides I've shown, are they going to be useful to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. All right. So here I've got on this slide 6 ways the coronavirus is going to affect construction. And so I've got the list. We've talked about a lot of those. I know I've used this site before in previous weeks. And so this is from Moody's Analytics, and it's projecting that 80 million jobs in the U.S. economy are at high or moderate risk today. And so right now we're at, I said, 20 to 30 million, considering the informal economy. We're easily going to go 2.5, 3 times that. And so we're looking at real issues. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
So just a quick question. I mean, with the subcontractors out there, how are you seeing and feeling from GCs if they're continuing to have you on job sites?
All right, go ahead. So what he's asking for the subs out there is, I have a guess, but I'm going to go ahead and let them answer. So I'll ask it this way. Are most of you still working on most of your projects?
Yes.
This is John from Ohio. Yeah, we're working on all of our projects except for 2 or 3 that were not deemed essential, but pretty much every general contractor deemed their project essential.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also what I'm hearing. You notice this week I haven't talked about moral imperatives, and so I won't. I've talked about them enough the last 2 weeks, at least for this. I'm not doing it much today, but most construction companies and most states, the stay-at-home orders are so weak that everybody's working. Again, I promised myself I wouldn't talk about the moral and ethical piece tonight, so I won't. But you know how I feel about that, and I'm right. So. Yeah, so this is more data and some more sources here on all of this. And so now someone asked last week, and I do take notes. I take a lot of notes while we're talking. And someone asked last week about they'd like to see some information about impacts from the architects and engineers. And so that's the next slide. And so I will make a comment that as much as I love them, most of the construction industry associations in North America are behind the curve from a data standpoint and from a prediction and projection standpoint. And that's unfortunate because we rely on them. I talked a little bit about why last week, but I saw something this week come out from one of the national organizations, so I won't name, and their information is at least 2 weeks behind the time. So, but to answer your question, I forget who asked it last week, but I did make note of it, and then I went and got the data. And so as of March 27th, and so that was 13 days ago, they put out sharp jump in owners canceling or delaying projects across the country. So that was 13 days ago. After 42 states added jobs in February, coronavirus is taking a swift and severe toll on the industry, prompting association officials to call for additional measures. All right, so they're still doing that at the lobbying basis. This is also why the lobbying is continuing to be strong from both the construction industry and also from other consumer lobbying entities. And so, but sharp jumps in orders canceling. That should be a red flag to everyone out there. Another reason to make your revised revenue projections. Penn Medicine, and so on the health side, speeds up construction of a $1.5 billion hospital by 15 months because of this, and of course for all the appropriate reasons. And so if you're a contractor on that job, you're probably really happy about the acceleration from a revenue and cash flow standpoint. But of course, the flip side of that, like we've talked about, is manpower shortages, additional cost, right? Because I'm sure what Penn Medicine is doing is trying to get their hospital up and running so that they can, one, conserve the needs of people, but also two, then to generate revenue. But for all of us on this call, we're hit on the other side of it with all of the acceleration, the trade stacking, the shift work, the overtime, all of those things. And I'm pretty sure that Penn Medicine is real happy to speed up the development of their hospital by 15 months, but they're probably less happy to see that go from a $1.5 billion contract to a $3 billion contract. And you can be sure there's going to be a ton of negotiation and lawsuits and claims and all kinds of things. And again, we'll talk more about that as we continue in this program in subsequent weeks. On AIA, so that was one of the specific questions. So AIA say that 2/3 of their members, right? It's a lot. 2/3 of their members report slowing or stopping of projects due to COVID-19. That's 66% of architects are reporting that that work is slowing or stopping at the design level. This gets back to my warning that this is not, if you're Hoover and you've got your head in the sand thinking that all we got to do is gut this out for 2 or 3 months, folks, if the architects don't have anything on their boards, the impact, usually we see the impact for that in our industry about 12 months later, 9 to 12 months later. And so that's their data. For Gensler, and so it's a large architecture firm, of course, in the healthcare sector, designing healthcare has surged. And of course, all of that makes sense. So in a nutshell, to bring all of that to close, General Contracting Association showing sharp declines, AIA showing sharp declines, healthcare sector obviously showing sharp increases. So that is my direct response to that question from last week.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Ty Nixon in Atlanta. So I was the one that asked that question.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the only low voltage contractors on this program. And what I'm trying to do right now is trying to start working with consulting engineering firms where we're writing the specs for them. So what I'm trying to look at is some way how to help the architects and consulting engineers in this kind of downtime where we could get ourselves in the door. So then when we have projects coming up, that they would spec out our stuff.
Okay, good. So that's a great comment. So here, I made a big action item to myself on this one, Todd, is that we do a lot. We have a big portion of our revenue is design, build, hospital work. And so I've got lots of things that I can put in a Dropbox on how to help architects and engineers and owners, right? How to help them in all ways. But of course, that's how we go about design build. And so do you think that'd be useful for you, Todd, if I put some of those things up?
Yes, that would be useful for me.
Good, because our whole shtick is, how do you get wealthy? You solve other people's problems. And so our whole marketing basis on the design build side for healthcare is helping architects and helping owners. Less so on consulting engineers, right? Because that's our competitor. All right, so I'll put a healthcare marketing and sales for healthcare folder into Dropbox, and then we'll talk about it in subsequent weeks as well. Great, and I love that what happened there is that what happened was last week somebody asked a question, Todd asked a question, I went and got the data, and then now how that's gone is that I've got some solutions. I'm sure some of the rest of you have some solutions on how to do that, and of course that's what we're supposed to all be doing. We can all be in this class. We can all actually be millennials, because millennials love to collaborate. And of course, that's the purpose of the whole damn class. So what I'm hoping will happen is as each subsequent week happens, I've given you tonight, and now I'm going to kind of start to summarize, I've given you tonight lots of things that have been produced by other people to show what they're doing to approach the problems in this crisis. I'm also sharing with you the things that we are doing and that we do, and then good questions spur that kind of thing. And so that's really how we all get the most out of this. And so I'll put a call out to all of you to the more all of you participate, and by participate I mean putting stuff in Dropbox, participating in the conversation, asking questions, the more all of us will get out of it. So I was also advised by my very brilliant educator wife, and I knew this, but I didn't do it last week, is to go back at the end of the evening and recycle through what we've done. And so that helps me too, because it helps me remember what we didn't get done that I want to talk about next week. So Roman numbers 1 through 3 we covered. Roman number 4, we covered B, C, and D as much as I want to cover them. On A, there's still more detailed information on the economy I want to talk about. So if I was going to give homework, my homework assignment is for you to go through that PowerPoint presentation, and then by next week I'll have more updates on the economy. I'll do a little economic and market update every week on what's new. But I'd ask you to go through that. Revised revenue projections we did in their entirety. What I want to talk about. We didn't cycle back to contracts, risk, and force majeure. And so in my company, we have tasked all of our project managers with doing something very specific relative to risk management. And so I didn't cover that this week. I didn't have time. I will cover that next week. I'm also then not going to post it in Dropbox since we haven't covered it yet. But at the senior level in our companies, we are focused on strategy and cash. So at the project management level, I need the project managers on this call to be focusing on contract review, contract execution, risk management, on those kinds of things. So I'll talk more about that next week. And then I also have a risk management matrix that I'm going to use with you next week. So I'm going to give you another action item, and I really would like very much for you to do this before next week. And so here it is. What I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to make a list of, let's just pick 10. I'd like for you to make a list of the 10 biggest risks that you believe your company faces both right now and over the next 12 to 18 months. So I want you to make a list of the greatest risks that you think you're facing right now, both short-term and long-term. Don't try to put them in any order. You don't need to spend a lot of time, although I think you should be thinking about this. You can do it as a stream of consciousness, and then just make a list of those things. Do it on a spreadsheet. And then if you do that, I will show you next week how to organize your thoughts in an objective, measurable way relative to those risks. And so the last thing I'm going to ask you for tonight is in the Dropbox folder, tonight or tomorrow morning will put a participants file. I'm going to ask each of you to create a folder that has your name on it. And then I'm going to ask you to put things into Dropbox. So just like tonight, I've shown you things from Philip and Armin and Mr. Dubach and other people as well, and me. And so I'm going to ask you to put tools that you come up with into your Dropbox folder, and then I'll ask you to put your spreadsheet that has those 10 biggest risks that you're thinking about or doing something with. And then if you do that, we'll take something. So are you guys willing to do that for me? Or with me, I guess I should say?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that would just be, just a stand-up thing for everybody to do. And I think we're all going to learn from each other. All right.
Is it just a list of items or categories? Or?
Yes, for the spreadsheet, it's just the top 10 list. And so you might put a column for what that thing is. All right. I'm worried about having to let more people go. All right. One of my risks, I'm fearful I'm going to lose good workers, as an example, something like that. And then don't try to rank it, don't anything else. But if you want to add something in another column, is whether you see this as a short-term or a long-term risk. So just a list of 10 things, 10 different cells of risk. And then the next column is, do you see this as a short-term or a long-term risk? And just do that. And then I'll give you a tool next week that will really help to get your head around that. All right. So before we go, other than the things that I've already highlighted that we'll talk about next week, and cash flow is one of them too, what things are on your mind or on your heart that you want to talk about next week that we aren't talking about yet? Just throw them out there.
This might seem a little bit too tactical, but I'd be curious on the subcontractors, what their new payment milestones would be with the COVID impact with the clients or with their contractors or general GCs.
All right, so be more specific about milestones, Phil.
Well, such as we talked about a little bit on supply chain, how much percentages are they going to ask front with the order, with the overall contract value, how much percentages for the fabrication and
good
things of that nature.
All right, good. All right, I think that's useful. All right, other things that, well, let me ask a different question since I'm not getting a lot of responses. Are we hitting on things that matter to you?
Kirk?
Yes.
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 All right, good.
Yep.
All right.
Hey, Kirk, this is Dustin. Last week you asked us to come up with 10 questions, I think, to move some things along in these discussions.
Yes.
And I have 3 I just want to touch on real quick.
Go ahead, Dustin.
That maybe we could add to. So the first one was, how can we prepare as a company so that when job sites begin to open, it's a smooth transition back to getting things moving from a supply chain to management to personnel on site.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm just writing them down now.
The second was what technology or processes could we tighten up on during the events that we're experiencing now?
So how do you mean by tighten up?
Well, that's a good question.
So I'll give you 2 perspectives on that. One is, and this is not the good one. One is, as owners, we have a lot of owners who are really resistant to spend money on technology. And so one way of tightening up on technology is to actually use less technology, especially if we're having cash crunches and spending less money. That'd be one way of tightening up. I would not ever be in favor of that. The other one is, how can we actually parlay technologies or even technology expenditures to help us to be more efficient? Which one of those ways do you mean, or none of the above?
I guess I would mean the more efficient one because of the challenges that we're facing with social distancing now, and then what they're going to require for future, job sites. I mean, I fully expect moving forward that we're going to have a lot more stipulations or rules and procedures that are going to be in place that we're going to have to implement and follow on job sites.
Okay, good. Now I really understand the question, which is good. I'm going to add the other 2 as well. But so I'll give you an example. I started this business in 1974. 1974 is when OSHA was enacted. Actually, it was enacted at the end of 73, but really started to come into play in 74. And every contractor in the United States in 1974 said, "Oh my God, the additional costs and burdens of OSHA are gonna be crazy." And so I think this is a parallel question, right? Is that we're already seeing 25% losses in productivity because of the measures we're doing on job sites now. And I think what your question is we're not going back to the old world. What will this new world look like, and how is that going to affect our estimating, our job site procedures, all that, right? All right, good. All right, that's a great question. What was your third one?
Third one was looking into the years ahead. There may be periods where job sites close because of outbreaks.
Yes.
Is there anything that we can do to prepare or combat the impacts on the company for periods of outbreaks?
Okay, good. I think that's a great question too. And so I'm not going to answer right now where that will lead to. I'm sure it's a great question. These are all really good questions, Dustin. Is where this will lead to is more than anywhere else is us having to have financial contingency built into our business plans for this kind of disruption in the future. And I would add to it, it's not just going to be pandemic type of things. And so I said in the introductory session that we're going to see more of that. It's also for climate related events as well, right? And so does that mean that as an industry, we're going to have to build into our cash flow and into our business plans X number of months of overhead that we keep perpetually out ahead. So let's say 6 months. So for example, like we talked in the introduction, a typical mature human being keeps 6 to 12 months of living expenses in reserve, right? That's the least that we're supposed to do. We know that something like 2% of Americans actually have that. But in our companies are we going to have to start to become more conservative to carry carry in reserve enough to carry our overhead for the size company that we want to be? I think the short answer is yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Kirk, actually, I've had personal experience of doing that in several North American job sites where we put the cost of the insurance for the weather and the wind in there. But what we had talked about before, and again, I'm not versed at it at all. What is going to be the cost of insurance for the pandemics?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm going to add that as a different question because as we see the contraction of the insurance industry reduced by what I think of that slide was 33%. You know what insurance companies are going to do is they're going to after 9/11 we had significant increases in insurance costs. Everybody knows that. You can be sure the same is going to happen here as well. And the major insurance companies are in a different bucket than all of us are, right? The insurance companies are in the bucket that are going directly to the Department of Treasury to get relief, and they will. But you also know there's going to be a concomitant dramatic increase in rates. I'll see what I can find out about what the projections are on that. I think it's probably too soon for that. But those are all good thoughts. All right. So
if I could just add, Kurt, on that, which is another paradigm to this, what the subs should think about is that deductible is going to be passed on to them.
For sure.
As a GC, that's what I would do.
Of course,
my client's going to pass it on. So are they putting that into their cash? I know we don't know what that is, but that's something to consider.
Well, that's a great comment because, of course, our industry always lags with cost relative to estimating, right? And so if for example, you're estimating projects right now, and everybody on this call is estimating projects right now. You're estimating right now, we already talked about you missing the losses in labor productivity, but I'm sure we're also missing the additional costs and premiums and deductibles. And so what do we need to do right now to get up to speed to hedge that bet, either in our estimate, which seems difficult to do right now because we don't have good numbers, or in our proposal language that says we are estimating the current cost of insurance as is normal business practices right now. However, our proposal does not consider any increase in cost for insurance past X number of days. So good. That leads us in discussions later on about proposals and estimating, and all of that is coming in this class. We just can't do it all in one night. All right, I'm going to ask you.
This is going to sound really crazy, and I'm sorry to get on this tangent again. And I'm just thinking this, as you just brought that up, is later on, maybe as a group or an entity, is have discussions with these insurance companies.
Yeah. Well, I like that idea. In fact, what I thought you were going to say is, I think out of this class, we got industry leaders on this call. Out of this group, we can make recommendations to the industry associations as well, PHCC, ABC, AGC, IEC, et cetera. And we can make recommendations to them about how they should be lobbying and negotiating with both the government, but also with insurance companies. What do you think about that?
I think if that group, if we're able to do that, that's really the success objective of this.
What do the rest of y'all think? PHCC members.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, we'll use them.
So we are going to make that part of our mission as well.
Like it or not, we're all interconnected here. Doesn't matter whether I'm in South Africa, I'm still buying cable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be buying cable from here, from North America, or wherever I can get it.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask everybody to do one more thing. I've asked you to create a folder. I've asked you to put an Excel sheet in there that has 1 through 10 on risk, long and short term. And then last week I asked you to come up with 10 questions. And I appreciate Dustin reminding me of that. So I want you to, if you haven't already done that, do this on a document, either a Word doc or an Excel doc. Put that in your folder too. It's three different files. One is risk, one is questions, and we'll help each other. All right. So it's 10:10. I'll hang on till the last person's gone. But I appreciate y'all coming out, and I'm going to ask all of you, if you think this is adding value to you and your company, keep inviting people. The more people on this call, the better, because we've got at least that many people are there on the same page. Yes. So invite people. Everybody has the link. John invited 80 more people, whatever it was. So yeah, let's invite more people. All right, now get the hell out of here. I got a drink.
Hey, Kirk, was there anything specific you wanted them to do with the COVID impact for change orders?
That's a very good one as well.
Yeah, I want that to be, John, go ahead and categorize that. We'll do a different folder. Let's call them group projects, okay? And so what I really want everybody to do is start germinating on that. I'll do the first pass. I'll do a template, and I'll throw it out to you all so that you all have it by next week, and then we all can hack at it and make it better. So just right now, I just want you to start germinating on it. And if you have ideas, shoot them to me, and then I'll put one up there, and then we can modify it. All right, John, I'm sorry. I should have gone to you anyway. Do you want to say anything before we let everybody go? I apologize.
Just thank you again, and remember the rules of Dropbox. If you didn't put it in Dropbox, do not delete it, because it deletes it for everyone.
Yeah.
Just, again, thank you, Kirk, so much for doing these, and thanks everybody for coming and showing up. And please, please do invite other people to participate. It makes a big impact on the impact of these events.
Yeah, and you can see how, and please keep sharing, because you can see already people are sharing really good stuff, and so keep it up. All right. If you don't want to talk to me, leave. Thank you. If you do want to talk to me, I'll stick around till the last person's gone. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
Just a real quick comment, Kurt. Appreciate the last thing you said there. I was waiting until it cleared so I could say something, but I'm really interested to see what everybody has to say about these the cost of these impacts and what impacts others are feeling, because I know with this large group, there's going to be many people that think other things that we're not thinking. So I appreciate that, and looking forward to the info.
Good. All right. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it.
All right. You guys take care.
Thank you.
Brad, did you quit spreading mulch?
No, I'm looking into it now. I knew that was coming one of these days.
Hell yeah.
We don't forget.
Kirk don't live too far from me. Hopefully he'll help.
All right, man. Just give me a call. As long as you got bourbon, I'll help.
Hey, I got it. So come on.
All right. Deal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
Say, how have you been seeing the COVID affect like builders risk?
You know, that's a good question. I've actually asked about a half a dozen insurance companies to give me whatever they are coming up with, and none of them they're holding it close to the vest right now. So I don't have the answer to that question, but it's on my list for sure. I've asked it. I've answered. Have you seen anything?
No, I know last week we kind of talked about it, and we just actually wrote or requested a policy on my current project for builder's risk, and we talked about it and it brought it to my attention, so I quick sent it off. And the question is still out there in limbo of how it really affects. Usually it was, force majeure is always kind of covered in it, but now with this pandemic,
yeah,
where does that line all of a sudden step into place and they say there's no more
Yeah.
risk?
I think where they're at right now is they're trying to figure out how to get out of it, right?
Right.
And I think that's happening because I actually sent a formal request in writing to an insurance broker that I know really well, and he sent back. He says, "You're out of your mind if you think I'm going to answer this question right now." But we'll stay at it. We will be getting answers.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. All right. Who else is out there want to talk to me?
Hey, Kirk, I'll be really quick. This is Todd Nixon. I cannot find the Dropbox share folder.
Okay.
At all.
What's your email?
Todd, TODD.Nixon, NIXON @metropower.com.
Okay. All right. I'll re-invite you. So I'll do that either tonight or tomorrow morning. But yeah, that should come right up. I'll re-invite you, Todd.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Say another thing, Kirk.
Yeah.
With the change order that we're kind of talking about here, how are you planning on gearing that? Is it going to be more of a subcontractor to the GC, or also implement a little bit of a GC on how to handle that to the owner?
Yeah, both. Because to me, they're the same, right? It's just a question of where the cost occurs. And to me, the way I would manage selling the change order to a customer from a GC is going to be the same. So I'll do it in a universal way. So that's a really good question, though.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Who else? I see Mark and Chris and Jeff and Robert and Dustin. Anybody else?
Hey, Kirk, thanks for hitting on the supply chain issue tonight. I'm going to go back and totally revamp the whole plan tomorrow on our supply chain for our projects.
Good. Let me know show if you have something you could put in your folder. That'd be great, so we can see what you want redid. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. Great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kirk.
Thanks, Chris. See ya.
See ya.
So out of the norm, I know that there's a standard usual lead time for the MEP guys. Is there anything that besides the standard items that have been really affected with this?
Yeah. What I'll do next week is I'll actually give you. There's a fair amount of data on that and what we're projecting as an industry as far as really going to be hit by. It's not just China; it's also Europe, right? And so both China and Europe provide a big part of the supply chain to the U.S. construction industry. So I'll give you lots of detailed data on that next week. Okay. So next week on Survivor. All right. What else? Anybody got anything else? If not, it's drinking time. Mark, are you still on? All right.
Kirk, this is Dustin. Can I be selfish for a minute?
Okay, sure.
Can I ask you what you wrote down for your action item list on my question about the tightening up of technology and procedures?
What I actually ended up writing, and to me, what made the most sense to me, it all makes sense, but to me, the way my brain works is that when you talk about tightening up technology, I instantly create an outline. All right, so we can talk about owners who are too cheap to use technology so that they actually falling behind. We can talk about how to use technology to make us more efficient in dealing with the challenges of COVID. And then the other one and I think the one that you meant the most was the future impacts of technology and changes on our job sites. I think that's the one that you meant the most, right? And so
that's the one I was thinking of, but I like the other two. Those are great.
Well, me being me, I'm going to hit on all three of them, right? So I'll give you information on all three of them.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
No, thanks for doing the questions. So now do three more.
I'm working on them.
All right, good deal.
Yeah,
right.
with that.
Say again?
To kind of go along with that, I mean, we did a Zoom meeting today. And just getting to see how many people were able to grasp the whole video portion of it.
Yeah.
And I can't talk to you. I don't know what's going on. So just, you get the black screen and you get the message, I don't know what's going on, or you get a text message saying, I can hear you, but you can't hear me. I can't say anything. Everything's going goofy. So, there's definitely that learning curve that's going to happen here.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to see how that all pans out here.
Actually, that's a really good comment, because even on this call, we're finding that, right, where people are having problems, having their audio work and things like that. I'm going to make a note on that. Is that somebody asked the question last week about how this COVID experience is going to change our industry, and one of my projections is that everybody will get better, and everybody needs to get better from the foreman level up on communicating using video conferencing. It seems like a simple thing, right? But even this group has lots of owners on it and senior managers. We need to get better at using the frickin' tools. Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I have a younger superintendent.
Yeah.
On the project actually that I'm running, and very tech savvy.
Yeah.
The whole Zoom thing very quickly. And we went through a few shared screens, and he's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And I talked to the seasoned superintendents, and they're like, yeah, just give me a call. They said, yeah, we can go through the plan on a computer and you can take control of it and point out, but we can do that on a phone call.
Yeah. Well, but it's a good comment, because it's the same thing I hear in the foreman superintendent training I do when I talk about using iPads or tablets. It's that, I write all that paper now. I don't need to. And so it's the same issue always with technology, right? And so that's good news, though, because the good news is we already know how to transition people to that. And a big part of it's about accountability, right? Is we have to do excellent training. We have to set dates where we'll have 100% compliance, and then we have to hold people accountable. So we can do this. And then the thing that's beyond that is, how will this actually increase our field labor productivity? Because we don't have to just use video conferencing from the office to the field. We can use video conferencing from the job trailer to the 8th floor, right? To where somebody's doing something, right? So now that's a real benefit of training people how to use these tools, right? So
definitely. I see with this whole COVID, this kind of really changing the whole construction industry on how we go about our communication even more than what we have.
Yeah.
We have the whole Procore or any other apps of that nature that we use now via email, whatever you want to do. But this whole face-to-face and being able to talk to somebody, you can tell if someone's pissed.
Yeah.
You can tell if someone's confused.
Well, most right. It's so much better than the call, because most language is body language, right?
Right. So if we're going through plans and you're telling me to look at sheet E401, well, let's look at it. But you're pissed off at me for some reason, and we're just talking about it.
Yep.
In your voice, I can't tell it, or you're confused, or I'm confused. It's a lot easier to just be able to, hey, show me what you want to talk about.
Well, that's right. And the good news is, with the technology, we can both be looking at E401 and looking at each other, right? And all of it gets better. So now there will definitely be positive outcomes from this crisis, right? So.
Right. And I don't know, Dustin, have you been doing any of the Zoom meetings or anything of like that that's been beneficial for you?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. So I have a particular general contractor that started Zoom meetings, and the face-to-face meetings were so confrontational. Now that we've moved to Zoom meetings and I can pull up my screen during the meeting and show them something, it's completely changed their demeanor during the meeting. It was always, fuck you, you did it wrong. This is how you're supposed to do it. This is how we always do it. And you reference something, or you show them a picture of what you're dealing with, and it's a completely different conversation.
That's really good. That's really good information. Is that, gosh, if we could cut down the confrontation level in our industry, that'd be a hell of a win, right?
Oh, huge.
And it saves so much time too. Not only have we included the owner in our conference calls now, the design team is a part of it. So they're not separate meetings anymore. You have the design team, you have the owner, you have the general contractor, and all the subcontractors. The meeting takes a little longer, but so what?
Yeah. And you've got no drive time, right? So
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I guess really on the end of it, I mean, if I have to have a meeting with the owner and I have to have a meeting with the design team and then I have to have a meeting with the subs, that's a lot of time that I'm.
Yeah, well, so I understand that, you still have to have your separate owners.
And you do, but I mean, if you can congregate everybody and try to work as a team, and I mean, I think from, the whole point of us really being on this is we've been on Benno and Kirk's classes before. So we know it really strives to be for the team that everybody's working together.
Yeah.
So really trying to get that whole team atmosphere going and bringing everybody in, where a lot of times we tend to leave, Joe out because we don't need him right now. Or an architect, I don't really want to hear him because he wants to do fancy dancy stuff in the corner and, unicorns and rainbows over there. I want to hear, where are we going to put that electrical outlet? I don't care about if it's going to look pleasing. I just want to know what's going to be functional. And so I think now that we can bring everybody together and really talk to them, then it really changes the whole atmosphere of construction, I think, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, all kinds of good stuff. All right. So you guys got to go. My wife just sent me in chat that she's eating all of my dinner and drinking all of my bourbon. So
bourbon, aren't you?
No, great talking to you, great comments, and I really appreciate the level of participation of both of you, Dustin and Nick, because it helps a lot.
Sure.
I want to get more people talking, but I really appreciate you guys talking. So don't change your level of participation. And now keep it coming. So all right, see you later.
One thing, I mean, I really would like to have Dustin, I love his comments as being a subcontractor for me.
Yeah.
Really would like them guys to, pick up and be like, hey, this is what we want our GCs to be doing. So that's the only thing, and that's
keep doing that, and then I will keep pulling it out, and I'll devise questions to make them respond to that question. So so all right, good.
Appreciate it, Dustin. Kirk.
Hey, sir. Good night, Nick. Good night, John. Good night.
Have a good one.
All right. Go ahead. See you guys later.
Right.
Yeah. Robert, are you still on? I don't think Robert's still on. I think Robert must have left his deal on. So no, I didn't want everybody else to go yet. All right, so I'm gonna expel Robert. And now, John, I want to do something different with you, if that's okay. Right now, I actually want to leave everybody else on. I'm going to stop the recording, but I want to say sayonara to you because I want to talk to this group because they're all in different places. I see Jeff on here too. Jeff, are you still on? Okay, so everybody else stay on. And John, I think it went well. Do you agree?
Yes. The projection spreadsheet, I was chatting back and forth with Jim Nyer. You remember he said he really liked that, and we were chatting about that. That's always a difficult thing to do. It's similar to teaching technology, in a classroom. But I think it was good that they saw it. But
good.
I think they got tired a little bit there in the middle, and then they stopped answering your questions. So. Well,
yeah, I'm less worried about that than I would be in a live class because, I mean, obviously, it's jam packed, right? We got, even if they're not asking or answering questions as much, we covered a lot of content tonight. Yeah.
Yes. Talk with your family. I'll talk with you on Monday.
Thanks, John. See you later.
Happy Easter.
All right. Thanks. You too. Hey, family. You guys still on?